Welcome to True Chilling Tales. I know you came to relax, listen, and fall asleep. Before we start, comment below and let me know what time it is with you and where you're watching from. Time for some chilling tales. Lay back, relax, and enjoy. The motel's vacancy sign stuttered red against the storm clouds, casting bruised light across the cracked parking lot. I'd driven past the Desert Rose Motor Lodge 100 times over the years, but I'd never stopped until my transmission gave out 3 miles back and I limped in on prayers and momentum. My name's Carter, and I fix industrial HVAC systems for a living. The job takes me through Nevada's forgotten corridors, places where the interstate bypassed entire communities decades ago. I should have taken Route 80, but the GPS promised me 40 minutes off my drive time. That's how you end up at places like this. The office door chimed when I pushed it open. The clerk was maybe 70, with liver-spotted hands and eyes that tracked me with unsettling precision. His name tag read Douglas. "Need a room?" I said, "and a tow truck, if you know one." Tow won't come out here during weather like this. He slid a registration card across the counter without looking at it. Room 12, end unit, $50. The price seemed wrong, too low even for a place this decrepit. But my phone had no signal and the sky looked ready to split open. I paid cash. Room 12 smelled like cigarettes and industrial cleaner. The carpet was worn to threads near the bathroom, and the curtains hung at odd angles, like someone had torn them down and rehung them incorrectly. I tried the TV, static on every channel except one, which showed a test pattern from what looked like the 1980s. I was checking the door lock when I heard the scream. It came from somewhere outside, thin and high. I moved to the window and peeled back the curtain. The parking lot was empty, except for my car and a white panel van near the office. Rain had started, fat drops that exploded against the asphalt. Another scream, closer this time, coming from the room next to mine. Room 11's door hung slightly ajar. I should have called the police. I should have done a lot of things. Instead, I grabbed the tire iron from my trunk and approached the open door. The screaming had stopped. "Hello?" I pushed the door wider. The room was identical to mine, down to the stained carpet and crooked curtains. But the bathroom light was on, casting a yellow rectangle across the bed. I could see dark smears on the sheets. "You're not supposed to be here." I spun. Douglas stood in the doorway, blocking my exit. He wasn't holding a weapon, but something in his posture made the tire iron feel inadequate. "I heard someone screaming," I said. "Did you?" Not a question. He stepped into the room, and I backed toward the bathroom. Room 11's been closed for maintenance, has been for weeks. The bathroom door behind me was shut, but I could smell it now, copper and rot, unmistakable. My hand found the knob and turned it before I could stop myself. Empty. Just a rust-stained tub and a mirror that reflected my own pale face. No blood, no body, but the smell. "The storm plays tricks," Douglas said. His voice had changed, become almost gentle. "Sound carries funny out here. You probably heard the wind." I looked past him to the parking lot. The panel van was gone. "I'm leaving," I said. "First thing tomorrow, I'm getting a tow and leaving." He smiled then, and it was worse than any threat. "Of course. Weather should clear by morning." Back in my room, I shoved the dresser against the door and tried my phone every 10 minutes. No signal. The storm intensified, rain hammering the roof like fists. I must have dozed off around midnight because I woke to silence. The rain had stopped. My phone showed 3:47 a.m., and there were voices outside. I crept to the window. In the parking lot, illuminated by the sputtering vacancy sign, Douglas and 3 other men stood around an open van. They were carrying something wrapped in plastic sheeting, something that bent in the middle like it had joints. They carried it to room 11. I watched them make 3 trips. 3 bundles? The last one was smaller. When they finished, Douglas looked directly at my window. I jerked back, but I knew he'd seen the curtain move. I heard their footsteps approaching, multiple sets, unhurried. The dresser scraped against the door as they pushed from outside. "Mr. Carter." Douglas's voice was muffled but clear. "You need to understand something. This motel's been here 40 years. We provide a service. Certain people, certain problems, they need to disappear. And we've never had an issue because we're careful about who stops here." The door shuddered as they pushed harder. "But sometimes," he continued, "someone shows up who shouldn't. Someone whose car breaks down at exactly the wrong time, and we have to make adjustments." I looked around frantically. The window was painted shut. The bathroom had no exit. My phone still showed no signal, and then I realized why. I pulled the back off and found the SIM card slot empty. They'd taken it when I was checking in. When Douglas had asked to see my ID, he'd stay for the register. The dresser moved another inch. I grabbed the tire iron and smashed the window. Glass exploded outward into the night. I didn't think, just climbed through. Felt shards tear my jacket. Hit the ground running. My car was right there, keys still in my pocket. I knew it wouldn't start, the transmission was shot, but I tried anyway, fingers shaking as I turned the key. The engine roared to life. Impossible. But I didn't question it. I threw it in drive and felt the transmission catch, smooth as silk, like it had never been broken at all. In the rearview mirror, I saw Douglas and his crew standing in the parking lot watching me go. Not chasing, just watching. I drove until sunrise, until I hit a town large enough to have a police station. The cops listened to my story with skeptical expressions. They said they'd send someone to check it out. 2 days later, a detective called me. They'd found the Desert Rose Motor Lodge abandoned. No clerk named Douglas. No bodies in room 11. No evidence anyone had been there in months. But they did find something. In room 12, behind the dresser I'd moved, there was writing on the wall. Scratched into the paint was something sharp. A list of names and dates, going back years. My name was at the bottom, dated the night I'd stayed there. And below it, in different handwriting, adjusted. My car's transmission failed again the next morning. The mechanic said it looked like it had been shot for weeks, maybe months. Said it was a miracle I'd driven it at all. The scratching started 3 nights after the upstairs apartment was supposed to be empty. My landlord, Greg, had mentioned the tenant moved out 2 weeks ago. I work from home as a freelance copy editor, so I'm here all day. The building's old, 1920s construction in a college town that's seen better days. And I'd gotten used to the usual creaks and groans. But this was different, deliberate. Like fingernails on wood, dragging slowly across the attic floor above my bedroom. I texted Greg around 11 p.m. that first night. No response. Called the next morning and got voicemail. Left a message about possible animals in the attic. He finally replied 2 days later. "Building inspector coming Thursday, sit tight." Thursday was 5 days away. The scratching came every night after that, always starting around 10:30 p.m., always in the same spot, directly above my bed. I started sleeping on the couch, but even from the living room I could hear it. Methodical, patient, like someone searching for something they knew was there. On the third night, I heard footsteps, not the random settling of old floorboards. Actual footsteps, slow, measured, walking from one end of the attic to the other, then back again. I grabbed my phone to call the police, but stopped. What would I say? Someone's walking in the supposedly empty apartment above me? In a building where Greg still had keys? Where maintenance workers came and went? They'd tell me to call my landlord. I went upstairs instead. The second-floor hallway smelled like mildew and old carpet. A single bulb flickered near the stairwell. Unit 2B's door was at the end, and I could see yellow police tape X'd across the frame. Not the kind you see on TV. This was official with "Do Not Cross" printed in bold black letters. My stomach dropped. I pulled out my phone and Googled the building address plus police. The first result was a news article from 3 weeks ago. Body discovered in local apartment complex. The article was sparse on details. A woman, 34, found deceased in her apartment. No signs of forced entry. Police investigating but no suspects. They weren't releasing her name pending notification of family. Unit 2B. I backed away from the door, my hands shaking. Got halfway down the stairs before I heard it again. The scratching, louder now, more frantic. But I was standing in the stairwell. The sound was coming from above me, yes, but also inside the walls. I ran back to my apartment and locked every lock. Called Greg again. This time he answered. "Why didn't you tell me someone died upstairs?" Silence, then, "Didn't think it was relevant? You're superstitious or something?" "There are noises, every night, scratching, footsteps. Old building, pipes, rats. Inspectors coming Thursday. Greg, there's police tape. Thursday." He hung up. I didn't sleep that night, sat on my couch with every light on listening. The scratching started at 10:30, right on schedule, but this time something else. A sound like digging, persistent, desperate. At 2 a.m., I heard a crack. I looked up at my ceiling. A thin line appeared in the plaster, hairline at first, then spreading. Dust drifted down. The scratching grew louder, more violent. Something was trying to come through. I grabbed my keys and ran. The hallway was empty. I hammered on one C's door. My neighbor wicked, an elderly man who kept to himself. No answer. Tried 1A. Nothing. The entire first floor was silent except for the scratching above me, now following my movement, tracking me as I moved through the hall. I called 911. "There's someone in the attic of my building, the apartment upstairs. Where the woman died, someone's breaking through my ceiling." The dispatcher was professional but skeptical, asked if I'd seen anyone. No. Heard them? Yes. Were they threatening me? They were trying to break through my ceiling? She said she'd send an officer to check it out. Could take 30-45 minutes. Non-emergency response time. I went back upstairs to 2B. The police tape was torn, hanging loose on one side. The door was open. I should have waited for the police. I know that. But the scratching was so loud now, so desperate, and it was coming from inside that apartment. I pushed the door open. The place was gutted. No furniture, no belongings, just bare walls and floors, and in the center of the living room, a dark stain on the hardwood that someone had tried to clean. Above it, a hole in the ceiling. The attic access. A ladder lay on its side nearby. Someone had set it up and climbed into the attic, then kicked it over. I heard breathing. Not scratching. Breathing. From the attic, a man's voice. "She hid it up here. I know she did. The money, she told me she hid it in the walls." Movement above. Then a face appeared in the attic opening, gaunt, wild-eyed, covered in insulation dust. "Who are you?" My voice barely worked. "Her boyfriend, ex-boyfriend. She owed me. I came back for what's mine." He started to lower himself through the opening. No ladder. I just dropped, landing hard on the stained floor. I ran. We made it to the stairwell as police sirens wailed outside. 2 officers caught him trying to climb out a second-floor window, still ranting about money in the walls. Turns out he'd been living in the attic for 3 days, coming down at night to search. He'd been questioned after her death. Domestic dispute history. But they'd cleared him when his alibi checked out. He wasn't supposed to be in the building. Restraining order. But Greg hadn't changed the locks, and the ex had kept a key. The inspector found the hole he'd torn in the floor above my bedroom. Another few hours and he would have broken through completely. I moved out a week later. Greg tried to keep my security deposit for breaking the lease. I sent him the police report and never heard back. Sometimes I still wake up at 10:30 p.m. listening for scratching. My new apartment is on the top floor, nothing above me but sky. But I lie there anyway, waiting for the sound of fingernails on wood, wondering how long he'd been up there before I noticed. How many nights he'd watch through cracks in the ceiling, listening to me sleep, planning his next move. The police said I was lucky. He was just looking for money. But I remember his eyes when he dropped through that ceiling, the way he looked at me. Like I was another obstacle between him and what he wanted. Like he'd already decided what to do if I got in his way. The window in the upstairs bedroom shouldn't have been open. Mrs. Carlyle had specifically shown me which ones locked properly before she left, and that wasn't one of them. I'm writing this because the family moved 3 weeks ago and I just found out why. Nobody warned me. Nobody thought I deserved to know. I'd been babysitting for the Carlyles for about 4 months, always on Wednesday nights when Mrs. Carlyle had her book club. The pay was good, $40 for 3 hours. And Emma was an easy kid. 6 years old, already reading chapter books. The kind of child who played quietly with her dolls and went to bed without complaint. The house was one of those new builds on the edge of the subdivision backing onto empty lots that were supposed to become more houses eventually. During the day, you could hear construction equipment from the main development. At night, it was silent. That Wednesday in October started normal enough. Mrs. Carlyle left at 6:30, and Emma and I made mac and cheese for dinner. We watched half of some Disney movie. Then I sent her upstairs to brush her teeth at 8. The house had that new construction smell still, that all fresh paint and carpet glue. Everything echoed a little. Emma called down that she couldn't find her stuffed rabbit. I went up to help her look, and that's when I noticed the window. The guest bedroom at the end of the hall, the one they used for storage. The window was open about 6 inches, curtains moving slightly in the breeze. "Did your mom open this?" I asked Emma. She shook her head, already losing interest, more concerned about the rabbit. I closed the window and locked it, thinking maybe Mrs. Carlyle had opened it to air out the room and forgotten. But something felt off. The room was cold, colder than just an open window would make it. I found Emma's rabbit under her bed and got her settled. She fell asleep fast, the way kids do. I went back downstairs and tried to focus on my homework. I was taking an online marketing course, trying to build up some credentials for a real job. The living room had these big windows facing the backyard, and beyond that, just darkness. No street lights back there yet. Around 9, I heard footsteps upstairs. Not Emma's light steps. These were heavier, deliberate. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, listening. The footsteps moved from the guest bedroom toward Emma's room, then stopped. "Emma?" I called up. "Nothing." I climbed the stairs slowly, my phone in my hand. Emma's door was still closed. I opened it carefully. She was asleep or hadn't moved. The rabbit was tucked under her arm. The guest bedroom door, which I'd closed after shutting the window, was open again. The window was open again, too. I'm not someone who scares easily. I grew up with 3 brothers. I dealt with plenty of pranks and scares. But standing in that doorway, looking at that open window, I felt something I'd never felt before. Not fear exactly. More like certainty. Certainty that something was very wrong. I closed the window again, locked it, and this time I pushed a box of Christmas decorations in front of it. Then I went back to Emma's room and sat in the chair by her bed. I wasn't leaving her alone up there. 10 minutes later, I heard the window open again. The sound of the lock clicking, then the slide of the frame moving up. I texted Mrs. Carlyle. Is there something wrong with the guest room window? It keeps opening. 3 dots appeared immediately, like she'd been waiting for a message. Then they disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, I'm coming home now. She didn't ask if Emma was okay, didn't ask what I meant, just said she was coming home. The footsteps started again, but this time they were in the hallway. I could see the shadow moving under Emma's door, back and forth, like someone pacing. I picked up Emma, still asleep, and held her. She was solid and warm and real. The shadow kept moving. Mrs. Carlyle got home in 15 minutes. Her book club was across town, should have taken at least 25. She came straight upstairs, didn't even call out. When she opened Emma's door and saw me holding her daughter, sitting in the dark, she just nodded. "Guest room?" she asked. I nodded. She went to look. I heard her close to the window, heard something else. She was crying. When she came back, her face was composed again, but her hands were shaking. "I'm sorry," she said. "I should have told you. We're handling it." "Handling what?" "We're moving. We have a lawyer involved. I can't really talk about it." She paid me for the full 3 hours plus an extra $100 and asked me not to come back. Not because I'd done anything wrong, she said, but because it wasn't safe. She made me promise not to tell anyone, especially not on social media. Said there were legal reasons. I found out yesterday why they moved. My friend Sarah's mom works at the title company. The previous owner died in that house. Suicide in the guest bedroom. The builder bought it from the estate, did a quick renovation, and flipped it to the Carlyles without disclosing anything. The Carlyles are suing, but here's what I can't stop thinking about. Mrs. Carlyle knew. She knew something was wrong with that room, and she left me there anyway with her daughter. She left us there every Wednesday for 4 months. I went back yesterday to look at the house from the street. New family already moved in. There's a kid's bike in the driveway, a swing set going up in the backyard. I wanted to knock on the door to warn them. But warn them about what? That a window won't stay closed? That footsteps walk the upstairs hall? That something in that house doesn't want to be alone? I drove away instead. But I saved the address. And every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock, I think about that window, and I wonder if someone else is sitting in a dark bedroom, holding someone else's child and listening to footsteps that shouldn't be there. The smell hit me first. Wet canvas and pine needles, sharp and clean, in a way that should have been comforting. I'm writing this from my sister's apartment in Denver 3 weeks after we cut our camping trip short. The police closed the investigation last Tuesday. Inconclusive, they said. No evidence of foul play. But I know what I saw, and more importantly, I know what I heard. My girlfriend Rachel and I had planned the trip for months. 4 days in Gunnison National Forest, just the two of us. We're both grad students. I'm in environmental science, she's in education, and we'd been buried in coursework since January. The trip was supposed to be our escape before summer session started. We arrived at the trailhead on a Thursday afternoon in late May. The forecast called for storms over the weekend, but Thursday and Friday were supposed to be clear. We hiked 3 miles in, set up camp near Willow Creek, and spent the evening like any normal couple on a camping trip. We cooked pasta on our camp stove. We talked about whether we'd stay in Colorado after graduation. We went to bed around 10. Friday morning, Rachel woke me up before dawn. "Someone's been through our stuff," she whispered. She was right. Our backpacks had been moved. Not dramatically, just shifted a few feet from where we'd left them outside the tent. The food bag we'd hung from a tree branch was on the ground, still sealed but clearly tampered with. The rope had been cut cleanly, not frayed like an animal would do. "Maybe the park rangers came by," I suggested, though I didn't believe it. We packed up quickly. The plan was to hike to the ranger station about 2 miles east and report it. Maybe there'd been bear activity in the area. Maybe someone was camping illegally nearby. We wanted to know we weren't alone out here with whoever had done this. The hike should have taken 45 minutes. We made good time at first, following the trail markers without issue. Then Rachel stopped. "That's our tent." She pointed off the trail, maybe 30 yards into the trees. And she was right. It was our tent, the same green 2-person REI model, set up in a small clearing. Same stuffed sacks beside it, same configuration. "That's impossible," I said. "We packed everything." But when I checked my backpack, our tent was gone. So were our sleeping bags. I'd packed them myself, but an hour earlier. I could still remember the weight of them. It took the feeling of cinching the straps tight. Rachel's hands were shaking. Someone's messing with us. We didn't go near the tent. We kept walking, faster now, not talking. The forest felt wrong. Too quiet, like something was holding its breath. Every few minutes I'd glance back, expecting to see someone following us. The trail seemed longer than it should have been. When we finally reached the ranger station, it was empty. The building was unlocked. A small wooden structure with a desk, filing cabinets, a radio setup, and a detailed map of the forest on one wall. A half-empty coffee mug sat on the desk, still warm. "Hello?" Rachel called out. Nothing. I tried the radio. Dead air. The power was on. Lights worked. Small refrigerator humming in the corner. But the radio wouldn't transmit. I checked the back panel. The antenna cable had been disconnected. That's when we heard it. Footsteps on the wooden porch outside. Slow, deliberate, then they stopped. We waited. 30 seconds, a minute. No knock, no voice, no further movement. I moved to the window and looked out. No one was there. But on the porch, arranged in a careful line, were our water bottles. The same Nalgene bottles we'd been carrying. They were still in my pack. I could see them through the open zipper. But there they were outside too. Identical, filled to the same level. Rachel grabbed my arm. "We need to leave. Now." We went out the back door and ran. Not down the trail we'd come from, but northeast, toward where the map showed the main road. It was further, nearly 5 miles, but we'd hit the highway eventually. We could flag down a car. The storm that wasn't supposed to arrive until Saturday came early. Rain started around noon, light at first, then heavy. The temperature dropped. We were soaked within minutes, and the trail turned to mud. Rachel slipped twice. The second time she went down hard, twisting her ankle. She could walk, but not quickly. We found an old fire lookout tower around 2 in the afternoon. The structure was decrepit, wooden stairs rotting, but it was shelter. We climbed up, huddled together on the platform and waited for the rain to ease. That's when I saw him. A ranger, maybe 50 yards away, standing perfectly still at the tree line. He wore the full uniform, green jacket, campaign hat, everything official. He was watching the tower. I waved. He didn't move, didn't wave back, just stood there. "Is that the ranger from the station?" Rachel asked. "I don't know, we never saw anyone." The ranger turned and walked back into the trees. We didn't see which direction he went. He just disappeared into the forest. We stayed in that tower until the rain stopped, then kept moving. We reached the highway just before dark. A truck driver picked us up and drove us to the sheriff's office in Gunnison. The deputies were polite but skeptical. They sent someone to check the ranger station the next morning. Everything was normal, they said. No disconnected cables, no extra water bottles. The ranger on duty, a woman named Sarah Polk, who'd been there all weekend, said she never saw us, never heard the radio, never left her post Friday afternoon. They found our original campsite. Our tent was there, still set up, exactly where we'd left it Thursday night. They found no second tent, no duplicate gear, no evidence anyone else had been in the area. Rachel and I don't talk about it anymore. She's seeing a therapist. I keep checking my belongings, counting things, making sure everything's where I left it. Last week, a package arrived at my apartment. No return address. Inside was a campaign hat, the kind forest rangers wear. Tucked in the band was a small note, handwritten. "You should have stayed on the trail." I gave it to the police. "They're looking into it," they said. But the ranger district has no record of anyone matching the description I gave. No one named on the duty roster for that weekend except Sarah Polk. I still don't know who was in those woods with us, but sometimes late at night I smell wet canvas and pine needles. And I wonder if he's still out there, rearranging someone else's campsite, waiting by another ranger station, wondering who'll come looking for answers next. The booking confirmation arrived 3 weeks before my sabbatical began. I'd been researching rural properties for months, looking for somewhere quiet to finish my thesis on agrarian architecture. And this converted farmhouse in Nebraska looked perfect. Original beams, isolation, reasonable weekly rate. The host, Margaret, had 5-star reviews spanning 2 years. I arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in late October, just as the first cold snap settled over the plains. Margaret met me at the gate, 70-something warm smile, hands that looked like they'd spent decades working soil. She showed me around the main house where she lived, then walked me across the yard to the guest cottage. "Used to be the hired hands' quarters," she explained. "Fixed it up nice for visitors." The cottage was perfect. One large room with a kitchenette, wood stove, desk by the window overlooking empty fields. Margaret pointed out the propane tank, showed me how to work the stove, mentioned that cell service was spotty, but the Wi-Fi was solid. "I'm just across the way if you need anything," she said. "Breakfast is at 8 if you want it, but no pressure. You're here to work." I settled in easily. The first 3 days passed in a productive blur, writing, walking the property, eating simple meals. Margaret brought fresh eggs twice. We'd chat briefly, then she'd leave me to it. Professional, respectful of boundaries. On Thursday evening, the Wi-Fi cut out. I walked over to the main house around 7. Margaret answered, already in her robe. "Oh, the router does that sometimes," she said. "I'll reset it in the morning, dear. It's late." It wasn't late. The sun had just set. But I nodded, went back to the cottage, read by lamplight instead. Friday morning, no Wi-Fi still. I tried my phone, 1 bar, but enough to send a text to my advisor saying I'd be offline for a bit. When I walked over for breakfast, Margaret wasn't in the kitchen. I knocked, called out. Nothing. The main house door was unlocked. I stepped inside. Margaret? The kitchen was spotless, too spotless. No dishes, no coffee pot warming, no signs of morning routine. I noticed the calendar on the wall, completely blank. No appointments, no notes, just empty squares. That's when I saw the photographs on the mantel. Margaret in every one, but different people beside her. Different guests, I assumed. Except in each photo, Margaret wore the exact same outfit. Same cardigan, same smile. And the guests all had the same expression, not quite comfortable, not quite aware they were being photographed. I backed out of the house. The cottage suddenly felt different when I returned. I started noticing things. The lock on the door was new. I could see where an older deadbolt had been removed, holes poorly filled. The window latches were painted shut. I tried to open one and realized it had been screwed closed from the outside. My laptop was moved. Just slightly. I always left it square to the desk edge. Now it sat at an angle. I grabbed my keys, my wallet, my phone. I'd apologize later, pay for the unused days, whatever. I just needed to leave. My car wouldn't start. The engine turned over fine, but nothing caught. I popped the hood. The distributor cap was missing. Not broken. Gone. I looked toward the main house. Margaret stood in the window watching me. She didn't move, didn't wave, just watched. I started walking. The property was half a mile from the main road, and I'd seen another farm about 2 miles south when I drove in. The fields were harvested, just stubble and mud. Cold wind cut across the open ground. I was maybe a 1/4 mile from the gate when I heard the ATV. Margaret came across the field perpendicular to me, cutting off the angle to the road. She stopped about 50 yards away, engine idling. "You forgot to check out properly," she called. "We have procedures." "I'm leaving," I shouted back. "Keep the deposit." "You signed the guest agreement, 3-night minimum, check-out inspection, damage assessment." She revved the engine slightly. "It's all in the contract." I kept walking. She kept pace, maintaining that 50-yard distance, hurting me. Every time I angled toward the road, she'd cut me off. My phone had no signal this far from the cottage. The nearest neighbor was miles away across empty farmland. I changed tactics, veered toward a drainage ditch lined with trees. If I could get into cover, lose her in the brush along the property line. She was faster than I expected. The ATV roared, closed the distance. I ran. The ditch was deeper than it looked, full of mud and standing water from recent rain. I slid down, scrambled up the other side. Behind me, the ATV engine cut out. I risked a glance back. Margaret stood at the edge of the ditch, not even breathing hard. She wasn't chasing anymore. She was smiling. "The Hendersons are about 3 miles that way," she called, pointing. "They're good people. They'll help you." I didn't wait to figure out the game. I ran. It took me 40 minutes to reach the Henderson farm, bursting into their yard covered in mud, gasping. Mr. Henderson came out of the barn, took one look at me, and his face went carefully neutral. "You're staying at Margaret's place," he said. Not a question. "She trapped me, my car, please. I need to call the police." "Margaret's had a hard time since her daughter died," Mrs. Henderson said from the porch. "Sometimes she gets confused about guests leaving. Thinks everyone's checking out wrong, breaking rules that don't exist. They let me use their phone." The sheriff knew Margaret by name. "We'll send someone out," he said, sounding tired. "You're the 3rd one this year." They found my distributor cap in Margaret's kitchen drawer. She claimed she'd removed it for safety reasons. I'd parked wrong, apparently, and she was worried about carbon monoxide near the cottage. The sheriff made her return it, drove me back to get my things. Margaret stood in her doorway as I loaded my car, that same warm smile fixed in place. "I hope you'll still leave a review," she called out. "Fair is fair." I checked the listing later, after I'd driven 5 hours straight and collapsed in a motel, still 5 stars. Dozens of reviews, all glowing. I scrolled down, looking for warnings, red flags, anything. Then I noticed the gaps. Reviews from September 2019, then nothing until January 2020, 3 missing months. July 2021, then October 2021. More gaps. Months where there should have been reviews but weren't. I thought about those photographs. Different guests, same forced smile. Some of them made it out, left reviews. I wonder about the ones who didn't. Patatas. It. The farmhouse sat 3 miles off Route 9, accessible only by a gravel road that turned to mud when it rained. I'd booked it for a long weekend, Friday through Monday, because the listing promised authentic rural solitude, and I needed to finish editing a manuscript without my roommate's constant interruptions. I arrived just before sunset on Friday. The owner, Mrs. Garrett, met me at the door with a ring of old brass keys. She was maybe 70, wearing a cardigan despite the August heat. "You're in the blue room upstairs," she said, leading me through a dim hallway lined with framed photographs of people I didn't recognize. "Bathrooms shared, but you're the only guest this weekend. I'm in the cottage out back if you need anything." She showed me the kitchen, the sitting room with its ancient television, and finally my room. Small, clean, with a window overlooking the cornfield. Before leaving, she pulled a leather-bound book from the dresser. "Guest book," she said. "Feel free to read what others have written, and please sign it before you leave." I unpacked, made tea, and settled into the sitting room with my laptop. The house creaked constantly. Old wood settling, I told myself. By midnight, I'd made good progress and decided to call it a night. That's when I opened the guest book. The entries went back decades. Most were brief. Lovely stay, beautiful countryside, perfect getaway. Mrs. Garrett is a wonderful host, standard vacation pleasantries. But as I flipped through, certain entries stood out. May 2019. Heard footsteps in the hallway every night. Mrs. G says it's just the house. Still unsettling. August 2018. Found the locked door at the end of the upstairs hall. Asked about it. She got very quiet. Changed the subject. October 2017. Why are there so many photographs of the same 3 people throughout the house? None of them look like Mrs. Garrett. I closed the book. Probably just guests trying to spook future visitors. I went upstairs. The hallway had 4 doors. My room, the bathroom, a linen closet, and yes, a 4th door at the far end. I'd noticed it earlier but assumed it was Mrs. Garrett's private space. I tried the handle now. Locked. I slept poorly. The house did creak, constantly, and around 3 a.m. I could have sworn I heard footsteps. But I was tired, and the manuscript was due Tuesday, so I stayed in bed. Saturday morning, Mrs. Garrett brought fresh eggs and bread to the kitchen. I thanked her and worked through the afternoon. When she came back at 5 to collect the dishes, I asked about the photographs. "My family," she said, not meeting my eyes. "All of them?" "Yes." But they weren't. I'd looked closely that morning. The same 3 faces appeared in photos spanning what had to be 60 years, and they never aged. Same young woman with dark hair, same middle-aged man with glasses, same teenage boy. "Where do they live now?" I pressed. Her hand stilled on the dish towel. They're gone. She left quickly after that. That night, I couldn't focus on work. I kept thinking about the locked room, the repeating faces, the footsteps. At 10, I heard Mrs. Garrett's cottage door close. I watched from my window as she drove away in her old pickup truck. I don't know what possessed me to go back to that locked door, curiosity maybe, or the editor in me needing to understand the full story. The lock was old. I found a hairpin in the bathroom and worked at it, something I'd learned in college, though I'd never actually picked a real lock before. After 20 minutes, it clicked. The room was a shrine. Photographs covered every wall, the same 3 people, hundreds of images. But these were different from the ones downstairs. These showed them sleeping, eating, reading, unaware they were being photographed. The dates written on the backs went from 1962 to 1989. In the corner sat a stack of guest books. Not replicas, the actual old ones going back to the 1960s. I opened the oldest. Every entry was in the same handwriting. Mrs. Garrett's handwriting. Different names, different dates, but the same careful script. Page after page of fake guests praising the farmhouse, the hospitality, the peaceful stay. Decades of fabricated visitors. I found a newspaper clipping tucked into the 1989 book. 3 bodies discovered in a farmhouse fire. Margaret Garrett, 45. Thomas Garrett, 47. Samuel Garrett, 16. Accidental blaze, ruled the county coroner. Sole survivor, daughter-in-law Patricia, who'd been staying in the cottage out back. Patricia Garrett, Mrs. Garrett. I heard the truck on the gravel drive. I shoved everything back, ran to my room, grabbed my laptop and keys. My phone had no signal. It hadn't since I'd arrived. I could try to drive past her, but the road was narrow and she'd see my headlights. The footsteps started in the hallway. Real this time. "I saw your light on," Mrs. Garrett called from outside my door. "Thought you might want some tea." I didn't answer. "I know you found the room," she continued. Her voice was different now. Flat. "You're not the first." But the others didn't understand. I had to preserve them. They were going to leave me. The fire was an accident, but they stayed after. In the photographs, in the house. They're still here. The doorknob turned slowly. I went out the window. It was only a 12-foot drop to the porch roof, then another 8 feet to the ground. I hit hard, twisted my ankle, but kept moving. Got to my car. Engine started first try, thank God, and floored it down that gravel road. I called the police from the highway. They investigated, found the room, the fake guest books, the photographs. Mrs. Garrett was taken in for psychiatric evaluation. They're still determining if charges will be filed regarding the 1989 deaths. I've been home for 2 weeks now. My ankle's healing. The manuscript got turned in late, but my editor understood when I explained. What I can't explain, what I haven't told the police or anyone, is what I saw in my rear view mirror as I drove away that night. Mrs. Garrett stood in the farmhouse doorway, backlit by the interior lights. And behind her in the hallway, 3 dark shapes that looked almost like people. The guest book arrived in my mail yesterday. My real entry, the one I never got to write, was already filled in. Same handwriting as all the others. Wonderful stay. Felt like family. Will definitely return. The last entry in the guest book was dated 3 weeks ago. I ran my finger along the handwritten line. Beautiful stay. Will return soon. And wondered if they actually had. I'm a freelance writer, and I'd booked this farmhouse through one of those rural rental sites after my editor suggested I find some quiet to finish my overdue manuscript. The place was 2 hours outside of anything resembling a town, surrounded by cornfields that rustled even when there wasn't wind. The owner, Mrs. Garrett, had left a key under the mat and a note saying she'd be back in 3 days to check on things. Perfect isolation. Or so I thought. The first night was fine. I unpacked, made tea in the farmhouse's ancient kitchen, and settled into the writing nook upstairs. The house creaked, sure, but old houses do that. I wrote until midnight, then fell asleep to the sound of crickets. I woke to voices, not loud ones, murmuring coming from downstairs. I checked my phone, 2:47 a.m., and listened. 2 people, maybe 3, speaking in low tones. My heart hammered as I crept to the bedroom door and opened it a crack. The voices stopped. I waited 5 minutes. Nothing. I convinced myself I'd dreamed it, or maybe it was a radio Mrs. Garrett had left on somewhere. I went back to bed but didn't sleep much. Morning brought coffee and rationalization. I explored the property, barn, chicken coop, a small equipment shed, looking for anything that might explain phantom voices. The barn was empty except for old farm tools. The shed was locked. I tried calling Mrs. Garrett, but there was no signal. The rental listing had mentioned spotty coverage, so I wasn't surprised. That afternoon, I found the second guest book. It was in the barn, tucked behind a loose board I'd accidentally knocked while examining a rusted plow. This one was older, leather-bound, and filled with entries dating back 15 years. I flipped through it, expecting more cheerful vacation reviews. Instead, I found warnings. They watch at night. Stay in your room. Don't acknowledge them. They'll think you're part of it. The Garretts aren't what they seem. Leave early if you can. Page after page, mixed with normal entries. Some people had clearly enjoyed their stay. Others had written in shaking handwriting about hearing voices, finding doors unlocked that they'd secured, seeing figures in the fields. One entry from 2019 simply read, "Call the police. Something is very wrong here." I photographed every page with my phone, even though I had no signal to send them anywhere. That's when I heard the car. A truck pulled up the gravel drive, and Mrs. Garrett got out. She was early. She smiled and waved, and I felt my stomach drop because her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Just checking in," she called. "How's your stay?" I walked over, the guest book hidden in my jacket. "It's great, very quiet." Good, good." She glanced toward the barn. "Were you exploring?" "Just looking around." "Find anything interesting?" I kept my face neutral. "Old farm equipment, mostly." She studied me for a moment too long, then nodded. "Well, I brought fresh eggs. I'll leave them in the kitchen." She moved toward the house, and I noticed she had a key. Of course she did. It was her property. But something about the way she walked, purposeful, checking windows, made my skin crawl. I waited until her truck disappeared down the road, then went inside. The eggs were on the counter. Next to them was the upstairs guest book, open to my entry from yesterday. I'd written something generic about the peaceful setting. Someone had added a note beneath it in different handwriting. She doesn't know yet. I grabbed my laptop and bag. I'd leave, drive back to civilization, and figure this out from somewhere with cell service. But when I reached my car, all 4 tires were flat, not punctured. The air had been let out through the valves. It would take hours to reinflate them with the portable pump in my trunk, and the sun was already setting. I went back inside and locked every door and window. Then I pushed the heavy kitchen table against the back door and wedged a chair under the front doorknob. The voices started at 10 p.m. This time I could make out words. They were discussing me. Someone said I'd found the book, and someone else said it didn't matter, that I wouldn't leave anyway. A third voice, Mrs. Garrett's, said they'd handle it in the morning. I crept downstairs with my phone's flashlight and followed the sound to a heating vent. The voices were coming through it clear as day. They were in the basement. I hadn't seen a basement entrance. In the kitchen, I moved the rug aside and found a trapdoor I'd somehow missed. It wasn't locked. I should have left it closed. Should have climbed out a window and run into those dark cornfields. But I needed to know. The basement was lit by camping lanterns. 4 people sat around a folding table, including Mrs. Garrett. They weren't doing anything obviously sinister, just talking, drinking coffee, playing cards. They looked up when I appeared on the stairs. "Oh, honey," Mrs. Garrett said, sighing. "You weren't supposed to come down here." One of the men stood. He was wearing a jacket with a county sheriff's patch. "We had a bet going," Mrs. Garrett continued, "on how long you'd last before you got curious. I said 3 nights. Tom here said 2. She gestured to the sheriff. "Looks like he wins." "What is this?" My voice barely worked. "A social experiment," said a woman I didn't recognize. She had a university ID lanyard around her neck. "We study fear responses in isolated environments. The voices, the guest book, the flat tires, all controlled variables. You signed a waiver when you booked, by the way, page 17 of the terms and conditions." I stared at them. "That's not legal." "It's a gray area," the sheriff said, "but don't worry, you'll be compensated." Mrs. Garrett smiled. "And you're free to leave in the morning once we've concluded our observations." I backed up the stairs. They didn't follow. They just watched, making notes on clipboards. I'm writing this from a hotel 3 hours away. I left at dawn, drove on half-inflated tires, until I reached a gas station. I've tried reporting it, but the sheriff's department says there's no record of anyone by Tom's description. The university claims they have no active studies in that area. The rental listing has been taken down. The thing that keeps me awake isn't what they did. It's what I realized when I got home and checked my photos of the old guest book. In every entry warning about the Garretts, the handwriting was different. But in every entry saying what a lovely stay people had, the handwriting was identical. And it matched Mrs. Garrett's note about the eggs. The rain started exactly when my phone died. I'd been driving cross-country for 3 days, trying to make it to my sister's wedding in Portland. The route through Nevada seemed like a good idea on paper. Less traffic, better time. My manager at the distribution center had approved my time off 6 months ago, and I'd been looking forward to this trip since then. Just me, my old Civic, and a carefully curated playlist that was now useless. The storm came out of nowhere. 1 minute, clear desert highway. The next, sheets of water so thick, my wipers couldn't keep up. I was squinting through the windshield when I saw him. A figure on the shoulder, thumb out, completely soaked. I'm not stupid. I've heard the stories. But it was a monsoon. The guy looked maybe 60, and there hadn't been another car for 20 minutes. I slowed down. He jogged to the passenger window, gray hair plastered to his skull, glasses fogged up, wearing a Carhartt jacket that had seen better decades. "Thank you," he said, climbing in before I could change my mind. "Thank you so much. My truck died about 5 miles back." He smelled like wet wool and something else. Copper, maybe. He kept his hands in his lap, fingers interlaced, and didn't look at me directly. "Where are you headed?" I asked. "Next town's fine. Couple miles up." I nodded and pulled back onto the highway. The rain hammered the roof. My phone was dead in the cup holder. the charging cable dangling uselessly. I'd meant to replace it before the trip, but kept forgetting. "Road's bad tonight," he said. "Yeah." "You from around here?" "Just passing through." He was quiet for maybe 30 seconds. Then, "What's your name?" Something about the way he asked made my shoulders tense, too casual, like he was checking something. "Sarah," I lied. He smiled a little, didn't show teeth. "That's nice. I had a daughter named Sarah." Had. Past tense. I focused on the road. The white lines were barely visible through the rain. No other cars, no lights anywhere except my headlights, cutting through the downpour. "You know what's funny?" he continued. "I've been standing out there for 2 hours. Maybe 15 cars passed. You're the only one who stopped." 2 hours in this storm? He should have been hypothermic. "Lucky timing," I said. "Lucky," he repeated. He finally looked at me then. Really looked. "You seem like a good person, Sarah. Trusting." My hands tightened on the wheel. The next town couldn't come fast enough. "How far did you say?" "Not far now." He shifted in his seat, and that's when I saw it. His jacket sleeve rode up, revealing rope burns around his wrist. Fresh ones, raw and red. My heart kicked into overdrive. I kept my face neutral, eyes forward. "Actually," he said, "I need to tell you something." I didn't respond. "That town up ahead, it's not really there anymore. I mean, it's there, but nobody lives there. Not for 5 years." I risked a glance at him. He was staring straight ahead now, jaw working like he was chewing something over. "There was a fire," he continued. "Electrical plant, whole place evacuated. They never came back. My GPS had been useless out here even before my phone died. No signal for miles. I'd been following road signs, but now that I thought about it, I hadn't seen one in a while. So, where exactly am I taking you?" I tried to keep my voice steady. "Just keep driving." That wasn't an answer. I pressed the gas. The speedometer crept up, 60, 65. The rain was letting up slightly, enough that I could see farther ahead. Still nothing. No lights, no buildings, just endless black highway. "You should slow down," he said. "Road's dangerous in weather like this." "I thought you wanted to get to town." I said keep driving. Didn't say anything about a town. The copper smell was stronger now. I glanced down at his hands, still interlaced, but now I could see dark stains on his knuckles. Not mud, not rust. I needed to get him out of my car. Up ahead, finally, a light, a gas station. Old and probably closed, but it had a covered area. I aimed for it. "What are you doing?" His voice had changed, harder. "Need gas?" I lied. "Your tank's 3/4 full. I checked when I got in." Of course he did. I pulled under the overhang anyway and threw the car into park. "I need to stretch my legs." I went to open my door, but his hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm. The rope burns on his own wrist were inches from my face. "Don't," he said. We sat there for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. Then headlights appeared behind us. A semi, rolling slow. The hitchhiker's grip loosened just enough. I yanked my arm free, shoved my door open, and ran. The truck driver was already getting out, a woman in her 40s with a ponytail and a reflective vest. "Hey, you okay?" she called. I looked back at my car. The passenger door was open, empty. The hitchhiker was gone. "There was a man," I started, but she was already walking toward the tree line at the edge of the lot, flashlight in hand. "Nobody here, honey," she said. "You sure you're all right?" I checked my car. His seat was dry, completely dry, like he'd never been there at all. but on the dashboard someone had written in the condensation, "Thank you for stopping." The truck driver let me follow her to the next real town, 40 miles up. My phone charged in her cab while we drove. When I got signal back, I looked up the ghost town he'd mentioned. It existed. Everything he'd said was true: the fire, the evacuation, the 5 years. What he didn't mention was the incident that happened 3 weeks before the evacuation. A man had been found dead in his home, wrists bound with rope, cause of death still undetermined. His daughter had been the last person to see him alive. Her name was Sarah. I drove straight through to Portland after that, didn't stop except for gas with witnesses. Made it to the wedding with an hour to spare. I haven't told my sister why I kept looking over my shoulder during the ceremony, or why I declined when someone offered me a ride back to my hotel. I still drive that route sometimes. Work requires it. But I never stop for hitchhikers anymore. And whenever it rains, I make sure my phone is charged, my tank is full, and I'm never ever alone on that stretch of highway after dark. Last month I heard from a co-worker that another driver picked someone up near mile marker 47. An older man soaking wet, rope burns on his wrists. She said he was polite, quiet, and when she asked his name, he smiled and said it didn't matter anymore. She dropped him off at an abandoned gas station and never saw him get out of the car. She doesn't drive that route anymore either. The deadbolt clicked shut behind me at 11:47 p.m. I remember checking my watch because I'd promised myself I'd be home before midnight after pulling a double at the clinic. My house was dark except for the porch light I'd left on that morning. I work as a veterinary technician, which means long hours and unpredictable schedules. That Thursday had been particularly brutal. 3 emergencies back to back, including a German shepherd who'd eaten an entire bag of dark chocolate. By the time I got home, all I wanted was a hot shower in my bed. The living room felt wrong the moment I stepped inside. Not obviously wrong, just off. The air was different somehow, stiller than usual. I stood in the entryway for a full minute, keys still in my hand, trying to identify what had triggered that animal instinct that makes your scalp prickle. Everything looked exactly as I'd left it. The throw pillows on the couch were arranged the same way. The stack of mail on the side table hadn't moved. The framed photos on the mantel caught the light from the street, the same way they always did. I told myself I was being paranoid. Exhaustion does strange things to your brain. I locked the door behind me and headed for the kitchen to grab some water before bed. That's when I saw it, the basement door, standing open about 6 inches. I always kept it closed. Always. The basement was unfinished, full of boxes I hadn't unpacked since moving in 8 months ago, and it had a damp smell I hated. No reason to ever leave that door open. My hand was on the doorknob, about to pull it shut, when I heard the sound. A creak. Just one. The specific groan of the third step from the bottom. The one that complained under any weight. Someone was down there. I yanked the door shut and twisted the pathetic little lock. Just a button lock, the kind a child could break through. My phone was in my purse, which I dropped on the kitchen counter. I grabbed it with shaking hands and pulled up 911, thumb hovering over the call button. That's when the power went out. Complete darkness. The hum of the refrigerator died. The digital clock on the microwave went black. Even the streetlight outside, which usually cast a faint glow through the kitchen window, was gone. The whole block was dark. I pressed the call button. Nothing happened. No signal. I looked at my phone screen, 1 bar, then none, then one again. The call wouldn't connect. I tried twice more, hands trembling so badly I almost dropped the phone. Footsteps on the basement stairs. Slow, deliberate, counting up. I ran for the front door. My fingers found the deadbolt in the dark and I twisted it, pulled the handle. The door didn't budge. I pulled harder. Nothing. The lock had been reversed somehow, deadbolted from the outside. That was impossible. I just locked it from the inside 30 seconds ago. The basement door handle rattled. I backed away from the front door, phone clutched in one hand, trying to think. The back door. I could get out through the back. I moved through the dining room by memory, hands outstretched, trying not to knock into furniture. Behind me, I heard the basement door creak open. "I know you're here." A man's voice, calm, almost friendly. "I've been waiting all day." I froze. He'd been in my house while I was at work, setting this up. But the back door was locked too, but from the inside, I could unlock it. My fingers found the deadbolt and twisted. It wouldn't move. I tried again, putting my whole body into it. Someone had jammed it, glued it maybe, or broken something inside the mechanism. "The windows are nailed shut," the voice said, from somewhere in the living room now, closer. "I'm very thorough. I used to do home security installations, if you can believe that. I know every way out of a house like this." I pressed myself against the wall next to the back door, trying to control my breathing. My phone screen provided the only light. Still no signal. The battery was at 23%. "I'm not going to hurt you," he continued. I could hear him moving through the dining room now, his footsteps confident in the dark. "I just need you to listen to me. About what happened to my daughter, about what you did. My daughter." I ran through every patient from the past week, the past month, every interaction at the clinic. I couldn't place him. Couldn't remember any situation that had gone wrong, any pet that hadn't made it. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, hating how my voice shook. "If something happened at the clinic, we can talk about it. We can—" "Not at the clinic." His voice was right on the other side of the wall now. 3 years ago, the intersection of Maple and 5th. You were texting. My daughter was crossing the street. The crash. Jesus, the crash. It had been ruled an accident. The girl had darted out between parked cars. I'd been going under the speed limit. The police report cleared me, but she'd died 2 days later in the hospital. And I'd never forgiven myself for looking down at my phone, just for a second, just to see who was texting me. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." "I know you are." His shadow appeared in the doorway. I couldn't make out his features, just his outline. "That's why I need you to understand what it feels like. To be trapped. To know there's no way out. To wait for something terrible that you can't stop." He stepped toward me. That's when the lights came back on. The sudden brightness made us both flinch. In that half second of blindness, I grabbed the only thing within reach. A cast iron skillet hanging from a hook by the back door. I swung it with everything I had. He went down hard, blood streaming from his temple. I didn't stop to check if he was breathing. I ran back to the front door, grabbed a dining room chair, and smashed it through the living room window. The glass shattered outward. I climbed through, feeling the shards tear my scrubs, and ran barefoot across the lawn to my neighbor's house, screaming. The police found him unconscious in my kitchen. He'd spent 6 hours in my house that afternoon preparing, nailing the windows, rigging the circuit breaker to trip on a timer, installing a slide bolt on the outside of my front door. They found a folder in his car with photos of me coming home from work, grocery shopping, at the gym. Months of surveillance, he survived. The trial is scheduled for next month. I don't live in that house anymore. I can't. What keeps me awake isn't what he did. It's knowing he was right. About the trapped feeling. About understanding what it's like to have no way out. I gave that to his daughter, even if it was an accident. And now I'll carry that understanding forever, along with the knowledge that any locked door could be a cage someone else built while I was gone. The hotel corridor stretched endlessly in both directions, its burgundy carpet absorbing every sound. I'm a safety auditor for chain hotels. Have been for 6 years. The Grandmont wasn't on my schedule. My boss texted me at 10 p.m. asking if I could cover an emergency inspection during their annual gala. Something about insurance liability and a tight deadline. I said yes because I needed the overtime. The event was in full swing when I arrived. Ballroom packed, jazz band playing, guests in evening wear, crowding the lobby bar. I checked in, got my room key for the 11th floor, and went straight to work. My job is simple. Walk every public area, check fire exits, photograph code violations, file the report. Usually takes 3 hours. I started on the ground floor and worked my way up. Everything seemed standard until I reached the 11th floor at midnight. The gala was still going strong below. I could hear the muffled bass through the elevator shaft. But up here, silence. The corridor was long, maybe 60 yards. Doors on both sides, evenly spaced. Emergency exit signs glowing red at each end. The lighting was dim, yellowish, the kind that makes everything look vaguely sick. I noticed the carpet had a pattern of interlocking diamonds, and if you stared at it while walking, it created an optical illusion of movement. I started at room 11 on, photographing the fire extinguisher placement, checking exit signage. Normal work. Then I noticed something odd. Room 1147 had a do not disturb sign, but the door was propped open about 2 inches. Not unusual, guests do this for ventilation. But hotel policy during events is to have security close, any open doors. I made a note and kept walking. At the end of the corridor, I turned back to photograph the full length for my report. That's when I saw him. A man in a dark suit stood outside room 1147. I hadn't passed him, hadn't heard him emerge. He was just there, facing my direction, but not looking at me, looking through me almost. He didn't move. I lifted my camera and took the photo. When I lowered it, he was gone. The door to 1147 was now closed. I'm not easily spooked. I've worked overnight shifts in empty hotels. I've heard every strange noise a building can make. But something about his stillness, the way he appeared in the exact spot I'd noted minutes earlier, made my stomach tighten. I continued my inspection, moving to the opposite corridor wing. More rooms, same yellowish light, same suffocating carpet pattern. I checked my phone to log the time, 12:17 a.m., and saw I had no signal, not even one bar. Strange, because I'd had full service in the elevator. When I looked up, the man was at the far end of this corridor. Same suit, same posture, same vacant stare. He stood outside room 1189, and as I watched, he reached out and pushed the door open slowly. It swung inward without a sound. He stepped inside, and the door closed behind him. My training kicked in. Open doors are safety violations. Unauthorized access is a liability issue. I should report it. I walked toward 1189, footsteps silent on the thick carpet. The corridor felt longer than it should. The emergency exit sign at the end seemed to recede, rather than approach. I reached 1189, and the Do Not Disturb sign hung crooked on the handle. I knocked. Hotel safety inspection, is everything all right? Nothing. I knocked again, harder. Sir, I need to verify room security. The door opened. Not all the way. Just 2 inches, the same gap as 1147. I could see darkness inside. No lights, no movement, but I heard something, a wet, rhythmic sound, like someone wringing out a towel over and over. Protocol says I should call security. But my phone still showed no signal, and the house phone alcove I'd passed earlier was 2 corridors back. The sound continued, methodical, patient. "I'm coming in," I said, pushing the door open. The room was empty, completely empty, no furniture, no bed, no bathroom door, just bare walls and that same burgundy carpet. In the center of the floor was a dark stain, roughly circular, about 3 feet in diameter. It looked wet in the dim light from the hallway. The ringing sound had stopped. I stepped back into the corridor and the door swung shut with a soft click. I tried the handle. Locked. I checked my room assignment sheet. 1189 was listed as occupied. Guest name MVC, party of 1. That's when I heard the footsteps. Not one set, multiple, coming from both ends of the corridor, moving toward me. I couldn't see anyone, but the sound was clear. Dress shoes on carpet, that muffled compression of pile fibers. Getting closer. I ran. I don't remember deciding to run. I just did. Back toward the elevator, past 1173, 1165, 1153. The footsteps matched my pace, always just behind, always out of sight when I glanced back. The corridor seemed to stretch. Room numbers repeated. I passed 1147 3 times. And then I saw the emergency exit. I slammed through the door and into the stairwell. The fluorescent lights were harsh after the corridor's dimness. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my camera bag banging against my hip. Down and down and down. I counted floors. 11 to 10 to 9 to 8. But when I burst through the ground floor door, I wasn't in the lobby. I was in another corridor. Same burgundy carpet, same yellowish light, same doors marching away into the distance. But the room numbers started at 1101. I was back on the 11th floor. I tried the stairwell door behind me. It wouldn't open. The handle turned, but the door was sealed shut, as if it had been painted over from the other side. The man in the dark suit stood at the far end of the corridor, and this time, he was looking directly at me. He raised one hand and pointed at a door. Room 1147. The door swung open. Inside, I could see myself, standing in an empty room, staring at a dark stain on the floor. I'm writing this from room 1147. The door locked behind me. My phone finally has signal. 1 bar, just enough to send an email. I can hear the gala music from below. People laughing, living their lives. The stain on the floor is growing, and I can hear footsteps in the corridor outside. They're waiting for me to finish. The hole in the ice was perfectly round, about 18 inches across, and it shouldn't have been there. My father and I had drilled our own holes that morning on Lake Vermilion, 40 yards to the east. I'm writing this because the police closed the case last week. Accidental death by hypothermia, they said. But I was there. I know what I saw, and I need someone to understand why I can't go back to Minnesota, why I sold my half of the cabin, why I wake up some nights convinced I can hear drilling beneath my apartment floor. We'd planned this trip for months, just Dad and me, like when I was a kid. I'm 32 now, work in IT in Phoenix, and we don't see each other much. The ice fishing weekend was supposed to fix that. Mid-January, off-season for tourists, but prime time for walleye. The resort was nearly empty. Just us, Mort the owner, a guy named Dale, and maybe 2 other groups scattered across the lake's 1,000 acres. The first day went fine. We caught a few keepers, drank beer, talked about Mom and whether she'd really go through with selling the house. Dad seemed lighter than he had in years. That night in the cabin, he told me he'd been seeing someone, a widow from his church group. I was happy for him. The second morning, the temperature dropped to -15. The kind of cold that makes your nose hairs freeze when you breathe. We bundled up and headed out at dawn, pulling our gear on the sled. The ice was 2 feet thick, solid and safe, peppered with old fishing holes that had frozen over. That's when we saw it. The fresh hole. Dad noticed it first, stopped the sled. Someone's already working this spot, he said, but there was no shanty, no equipment, no tracks leading to or from it. Just the hole, drilled clean through, water black and still inside. Must have come by snowmobile, I said, though I didn't see any tread marks. We set up our own spot and got to work. Around noon, Dad walked over to check the mystery hole. He was gone maybe 3 minutes. When he came back, his face looked strange. There's something down there, he said. I saw movement, something big. Lake sturgeon can get massive, I told him. Sometimes they cruise under the ice, but he shook his head. Wouldn't look at me directly. It wasn't a fish. We kept fishing, but the afternoon felt wrong. The wind had died, completely unusual for that lake, and the silence pressed down like something physical. No snowmobiles in the distance, no ice cracking and settling. Just our breathing and the occasional scratch of our auger when we cleared slush from our holes. Around 3, I walked over to the mystery hole myself. I don't know why. Curiosity, maybe. Wanting to prove Dad wrong. I knelt down, leaned over the opening. The water was so dark it looked solid, like I could touch it. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and aimed it into the hole. Something looked back. Not fish eyes. Human eyes. Wide and pale and staring up through 20 feet of water. A face, pressed against the underside of the ice just beyond the hole's edge. The mouth was open. There were hands too, palms flat against the ice, fingers spread. I jerked backwards so hard I fell on my ass, my phone skittering across the ice. When I scrambled back to look again, there was nothing. Just black water. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely pick up my phone. Dad was packing up when I got back to our spot. "We're leaving," he said. His voice was flat, decided. "Now." I didn't argue. We were halfway to shore when I heard the drilling. Behind us, the sound of an auger biting through ice. I turned. The mystery hole was maybe 50 yards away now, and there was someone standing next to it. A man in dark winter gear, working an auger into the ice right beside the existing hole, making a second one. "Dad?" I grabbed his arm. The man didn't look up, just kept drilling. Even from that distance, I could see he was working fast, mechanical, like he'd done this 10,000 times. "Keep moving," Dad said. We did. When I looked back again, the man was gone. But there were 2 holes now, side by side, perfectly round. Back at the cabin, we loaded the truck. Dad wanted to drive straight through to Minneapolis, a 6-hour trip in the dark. But I convinced him to wait until morning. We'd leave at first light, I said, just one more night. I wish we'd driven through. Around midnight, I heard the drilling again, faint but unmistakable, coming from the lake. I went to the window. In the moonlight, I could see the ice, vast and white. And I could see the holes. There were more of them now, 8, maybe 10, clustered in a rough circle around where we'd been fishing. As I watched, a figure moved between them, dragging an auger. "Dad?" I whispered. He was already awake, standing behind me. "I see it." The figure stopped at the center of the circle and started drilling again. The sound carried clearly across the frozen lake, rhythmic and patient. "We're leaving," Dad said. "Right now." We threw our bags in the truck and drove to the resort office. Dale was asleep, angry when we woke him. He said nobody else was on the ice, hadn't been anyone for 2 days except us. When I described the man with the auger, Dale's face went strange, the same look Dad had worn earlier. "What?" I demanded. "There was a guy," Dale said slowly, 10, 12 years ago, ice fisherman, obsessed with the lake. He'd drilled dozens of holes mapping the bottom, looking for structure, spent every winter out there. He paused. He went through the ice one March. Thaw came early. They never found him. We drove straight to Minneapolis. Dad died 2 weeks later. Heart attack in his driveway. The coroner said his heart was fine a month before, at his physical. I know the ice did something to him. Scared something loose inside. The police checked the lake after I reported what we'd seen. No holes, they said, no evidence of recent drilling. The ice was undisturbed. But I have photos on my phone. The holes, the figure in the distance. Except when I look at them now, they're just pictures of empty ice. White and flat and endless. Last month I got a package, no return address. Inside was an ice auger blade, rusted and bent, and a map of Lake Vermilion, with a red circle drawn around our fishing spot. Inside the circle someone had written a number, 47. I counted the holes in my photos before they disappeared. There were 46. The lawyer's office smelled like old paper and furniture polish, the kind of scent that clings to places where people sign away their futures. Mr. Hendricks slid the deed across his mahogany desk with fingers that trembled slightly, though whether from age or something else I couldn't tell. "Your uncle's estate," he said, "all yours now." I hadn't seen Uncle Marcus in 15 years. Didn't even know he'd died until Hendricks tracked me down at my apartment in Seattle. Heart attack, apparently, no other family. The property, an old industrial warehouse converted into living space, sat 2 hours outside Portland in a town called Millbrook. Population, maybe 300. The drive out took me through dense forest and failing daylight. My phone lost signal about 40 minutes in. The GPS kept working, barely, guiding me down increasingly narrow roads until I reached a gravel drive that wound through overgrown blackberry bushes. The warehouse loomed against the darkening sky, 3 stories of red brick and rusted metal siding, windows like empty eye sockets. The kind of place that photographs well for real estate listings but feels wrong in person. I parked and grabbed my overnight bag. The plan was simple. Spend the night, assess what needed to be done, maybe hire someone local to handle the sale. Get back to my life. The key Hendricks gave me stuck in the lock. I had to force it shoulder against the door until something gave with a sound like breaking bone. Inside, the air was stale and cold despite it being July. My flashlight beam cut through darkness that seemed to absorb the light. The ground floor was mostly open space, concrete floors, exposed beams, remnants of whatever machinery had once occupied the building. Stairs led up to what I assumed were the living quarters. Marcus had done some work on the second floor. Drywall partitions created rooms. Furniture covered in white sheets like ghosts. Everything coated in dust except the desk. It sat in what must have been his office, surface clear, papers stacked neatly. A laptop, closed. A coffee mug with residue still wet at the bottom. I touched the mug. Still slightly warm. My pulse kicked up. The heat could be explained. Summer day, trapped warmth, whatever. But the lack of dust? I opened the laptop, password protected, tried a few obvious combinations. Nothing. That's when I heard it. Footsteps above me. I froze. Flashlight pointed at the ceiling. The footsteps moved deliberately, unhurried, back and forth across what had to be the third floor. Hello? My voice cracked. Is someone up there? The footsteps stopped. I should have left. Should have walked straight back to my car and called. Who? The police? My phone had no signal, and what would I even say? I heard footsteps in the property I just inherited. Instead, I found the stairs to the third floor. They were metal, each step clanging under my weight. The sound echoed through the empty building. The third floor was unfinished. Just open space, more beams, more shadows. My flashlight swept the darkness. Nothing, no one. But there were footprints in the dust. Recent. Leading to a corner where a tarp covered something large. I approached slowly, pulled back the tarp. File boxes, maybe 20 of them. All labeled with dates going back 30 years. And on top a folder marked Deed Transfer Urgent. I opened it. Inside were documents, letters, photographs. It took me a few minutes to piece it together, but when I did, my stomach dropped. The property wasn't just inherited. Marcus had bought it from someone named Sarah Chen 15 years ago. The same year he'd stopped talking to me, the same year my mother had died, and Sarah Chen, according to the documents, had been forced to sell. Something about debts, threats. A group called Millbrook Development LLC had been pressuring her, buying up properties in the area, making offers that weren't really offers. Marcus had paid twice what the property was worth, saved her from foreclosure. But there were letters here too, recent ones. Sarah's children, claiming Marcus had been part of the scheme all along, that he'd benefited from their mother's desperation. The footsteps started again. Closer now. Right behind me, I spun around. A man stood at the top of the stairs. 50s, flannel shirt, work boots. He raised his hand slowly. Easy, he said. I'm not here to hurt you. Who are you? Tom Chen. Sarah was my mother. He gestured at the boxes. I've been coming here since Marcus died, trying to find proof. Proof of what? That he was working with them. Millbrook Development. They've been buying everything in town for 20 years, forcing people out. My mother fought them until she had nothing left. Then Marcus swooped in, played the hero, but really he just took what they wanted. I looked at the papers in my hand. These letters say he paid her double. Blood money. Tom stepped closer. He felt guilty, sure, but he still took it. And now you're here to sell it to them, finish what he started. I didn't know any of this. Doesn't matter. His voice was steady, but his hands shook. This property is the last piece they need. There's lithium under this land, under the whole town, worth millions. They'll tear everything down, including what's left of my mother's grave. I backed toward the stairs. I'm not selling to anyone. I'll figure something out. You don't understand. Tom pulled something from his pocket. A phone. He showed me the screen, a text message sent this morning. New owner arriving today. Persuade or escalate. I got the same message, Idan, he said. They think I'm working for them, that I've been monitoring the property. But I've been gathering evidence. Everything Marcus collected is in these boxes. Proof of fraud, extortion, worse. If you sell, it all disappears. The building groaned around us. Wind, maybe, or something else. What do you want from me? I asked. Help me expose them. Or at least don't sell, not to Millbrook. I thought about Marcus. About why he'd really left me this place. Not as an asset, as a responsibility. How long before they come looking for me? Tom checked his phone. Already did. There's a car coming up the drive. 3 minutes, maybe less. I looked at the boxes, at Tom, at the only exit. "We take the boxes," I said. "All of them. Now." We moved fast, carrying them down the metal stairs two at a time. The sound of our footsteps mixed with something else, an engine growing closer. Headlights swept through the first-floor windows as we loaded the last box into my trunk. I drove away from the Blackwood estate without looking back, Tom following in his truck. In my rear-view mirror, I watched two SUVs pull up to the warehouse, watched men get out, flashlights in hand. My phone buzzed as signal returned. A text from an unknown number. "We know where you live." I guess inheritance means more than just property. Sometimes it means inheriting someone else's war. The museum's climate control system hummed at exactly 68 degrees, a sound I'd grown to hate over 3 years of working night security. Tonight marked my last shift before transferring to the day rotation, and I was counting down the hours. I'm writing this from a hospital bed because the police need an official statement, and my lawyer suggested I document everything while it's fresh. The detectives don't believe half of what I'm telling them, but the security footage speaks for itself. At least the parts that weren't corrupted. The contemporary art wing closes at 6 p.m. during off-season, but staff has access until midnight for inventory and maintenance. I was doing my usual rounds when I first noticed the mirror installation behaving strangely. Infinite recursion, by some European artist whose name I can never pronounce. 27 mirrors arranged in a spiral configuration, each one reflecting the others at calculated angles. The placard said it was meant to explore the fragmentation of self in modern society, or something equally pretentious. I'd walked past it hundreds of times. Never gave it much thought beyond checking that none of the mirrors had fingerprints. But at 9:47 p.m. my reflection waved at me. Not a delayed movement, not a trick of the eye. I was standing still, hand resting on my belt, and the figure in the central mirror raised its right hand in a deliberate greeting. Then it smiled. I stepped back. My reflection stepped forward. The rational part of my brain cycled through explanations. Exhaustion, the new medication my doctor prescribed for migraines. Maybe someone had replaced the mirrors with screens as part of some interactive exhibit upgrade that no one bothered telling security about. The museum pulled that kind of thing constantly, artists installing pieces overnight, leaving us to deal with confused visitors. I pulled out my radio to call the main desk, but before I could press the button, all 27 mirrors flickered. For just a second, every reflection showed a different version of me. Different clothes, different ages. One version was covered in blood. The radio slipped from my hand and clattered on the marble floor. "Testing the boundaries of perception," a voice said behind me. My voice, exactly my voice. I spun around. The gallery was empty. When I turned back to the mirrors, my reflection was mimicking my exact movements again, no delay, perfectly synchronized. Everything seemed normal, except for the cold sweat running down my spine, and the certainty that I hadn't imagined what I'd just seen. I should have left, called it in, let someone else handle it. But 3 years of routine had made me complacent, and I convinced myself I was seeing things. The logical explanation felt safer than the alternative. I bent to retrieve my radio. In the mirrors, my reflection bent down too, but its hand moved to the left while mine moved right. Mirror opposite. That's how mirrors work. Except I'm left-handed and I'd reached with my left hand. My reflection had reached with its left hand too, not its right. Mirrors don't work that way. I straightened up slowly. The reflection matched me perfectly now, but something in its expression looked wrong. Too focused. too aware. "Who authorized the installation change?" I said out loud, trying to sound official, trying to pretend this was a normal security issue. All 27 reflections answered in unison. No one. The temperature dropped. I could see my breath. Then the reflections started moving independently. Not random movements, coordinated ones. They turned their heads in sequence, one mirror after another, tracking something I couldn't see, something behind me. I ran. The contemporary art wing connects to the East Gallery through a narrow hallway lined with smaller exhibits. My footsteps echoed on the marble, too loud, too fast. Behind me, I heard other footsteps, same rhythm, same weight. I didn't look back. Every reflective surface I passed showed the same thing. My reflection was no longer running, it was walking, calmly, deliberately. And it was gaining on me. The East Gallery houses the Mirror Maze, a permanent installation that's popular with school groups. 43 mirrors creating an elaborate labyrinth. I'd walked through it 1,000 times for security checks. I knew every turn. I should have avoided it, should have headed for the exits. But the main doors were on the far side of the building, and something primal in my brain screamed that I couldn't let that thing catch me in the open. Inside the maze, my reflection surrounded me. Hundreds of versions, all watching, all still while I was breathing hard, heart hammering. "Why are you running from yourself?" they asked, perfectly synchronized. I closed my eyes, felt my way forward using the gaps between mirrors. It's a trick we teach kids who get scared in the maze. Follow the wall, you'll find the exit. But the maze was changing. Gaps I knew should be there were, solid glass. Paths that should lead to dead ends opened into new sections. My hand touched cold mirror after cold mirror, and each time I opened my eyes to check my progress, more reflections stared back. Then I saw him. Not my reflection, someone else, a security guard I didn't recognize, standing in one of the mirrors. He was pale, eyes wide with terror, mouth open in a silent scream. Behind him I could see the same maze, but different. Wrong angles, wrong lighting. He pressed his hand against the glass from the inside. I stumbled backward into another mirror. It rippled like water, and for a horrible moment I felt it pulling me in. I broke the mirror with my flashlight. The sound exploded through the gallery, a crack like thunder, then the cascade of glass hitting marble. The alarm system triggered, piercing and immediate. Emergency lights flooded the space. In the sudden brightness, every reflection showed exactly what it should. Just me, standing in a maze of broken and intact mirrors, surrounded by glittering shards. The guard in the wrong mirror was gone. Security and police arrived within minutes. They found me sitting on the floor, bleeding from a dozen small cuts, surrounded by evidence of vandalism to a $200,000 art installation. The footage from my body camera shows me running from nothing, talking to myself, attacking a mirror for no apparent reason. But the stationary cameras in the contemporary art wing tell a different story. At 9:47 p.m., the central mirror in infinite recursion shows two figures. Me standing still and someone else standing behind me, wearing my exact uniform. But the museum's insurance company is calling it equipment malfunction. The police are calling it a psychotic break. My union rep says, "I'll keep my pension if I agree to early retirement and psychiatric evaluation." None of them can explain why the broken mirror, when they cleaned it up the next morning, reflected an empty gallery, even when people were standing right in front of it. Or why, in every piece of security footage from that night, there are moments where my reflection moves a fraction of a second before I do. I'm scheduled for discharge tomorrow. The cuts are healing. The nightmares aren't. Last night, a nurse brought me my belongings. My phone was inside, and I hadn't touched it since the incident. There was one new photo in the gallery taken at 9:46 p.m. A selfie I don't remember taking. In it, I'm smiling. But in the mirror behind me, my reflection isn't. Willow Creek Pet Cemetery closes at sunset. The wrought iron gate locks automatically, and the groundskeeper leaves by 5:30 p.m. sharp. I learned both of those facts the hard way last October, during the 3 days of town-wide power outages that followed the ice storm. I'm a veterinary technician at Willow Creek Animal Hospital, and part of my job involves coordinating with the pet cemetery for clients who choose burial over cremation. It's a small operation, maybe 2 acres of rolling hills, dotted with headstones, some elaborate marble affairs, others simple wooden crosses. The place has been around since the 1940s, family-owned, meticulously maintained. I'd been there dozens of times for services, always during business hours, always with other people around. The storm hit on a Thursday. By Friday afternoon, half the county was dark, and the hospital was running on generators. Mrs. Chen called around 4 p.m., hysterical. Her golden retriever had been buried at Willow Creek 2 weeks earlier, and in her grief-stricken state, she'd placed her late husband's wedding ring in the casket. She needed it back. Her daughter was getting married in 3 days, and she'd promised it to her son-in-law. I should have said no. I should have told her to wait until Monday, until the power was back, until the groundskeeper could help. But Mrs. Chen had been a client for 15 years, and she was sobbing on the phone. And I'm too soft for my own good. The cemetery was technically open. The power outage had disabled the automatic gate lock. I parked near the entrance at 4:45 p.m., figuring I had maybe 45 minutes of decent light. The groundskeeper's truck was gone. The small office building was dark, door locked. I had the plot location from our records. Section C, row 7, plot 14. The ice had done a number on the trees. Branches lay scattered across the paths, and a massive oak had split down the middle, half of it crushing a section of the perimeter fence. The ground was still partly frozen, crunching under my boots. No birds, no traffic sounds from the highway. Just wind moving through bare branches and the distant crack of ice breaking. Section C was at the back of the property, past the older graves from the 50s and 60s. The fresh plot was easy to spot. New sod, a temporary marker with the dog's name. I'd brought a shovel from the hospital's maintenance closet. The ground was softer than I expected, the dirt still loose from the recent burial. I started digging. That's when I noticed the van. It was parked on the access road that ran along the cemetery's back edge, near where the oak had taken down the fence. White, unmarked, windowless in the back. Not the groundskeeper's vehicle, not a funeral home transport, just sitting there backed up to the gap in the fence. I stopped digging. Watched the van for a full minute. No movement, no one got out. The light was fading faster than I had anticipated, clouds moving in to block what little sun remained. I went back to digging. Got down maybe 2 feet when I heard voices. 2 men, maybe 3, talking in low tones. Footsteps on frozen ground. They were in the cemetery, somewhere past the section I was in, near the older graves. I couldn't make out words, just the rumble of male voices and the rhythmic sound of shovels hitting earth. Every rational part of my brain said, groundskeepers working late, maintenance crew, something normal. But the cemetery only employed one groundskeeper, an older man named Frank, who definitely wasn't out here. And no one does maintenance during a power outage at dusk. I crouched next to the grave I'd been digging, shovel in hand, listening. The voices continued. Then I heard something that made my stomach drop. The sound of a casket being opened. The distinct creak of hinges, the scrape of metal on metal. They were robbing graves. I thought about Mrs. Chen's wedding ring, about how I just watched some documentary about grave robbing, about jewelry theft from cemeteries. These guys had probably been watching, waiting for the power outage, for the security systems to go down. The broken fence was their entry point. They were systematically working through graves, taking whatever valuables had been buried with beloved pets, or worse. I remembered another news story from a few months back, something about a black market for veterinary remains, research facilities that paid for fresh tissue samples. I'd dismissed it as sensationalist garbage at the time. The voices were getting closer. I could see flashlight beams now sweeping through the headstones 2 sections over. 3 men moving methodically, working as a team. One digging, one standing watch. One doing something at the graves themselves. My phone was in my car. No signal anyway. The storm had taken out cell towers across the county. The cemetery office was locked. The nearest house was half a mile away. I made myself small behind a large marble monument, watching the flashlights approach. And they were working their way through Section B now, getting closer. I could hear them clearly now. "This one's got the good stuff," one said. "Leather collar, brass nameplate, maybe gold-plated." "Forget the collars. We need the specimens. Lab's paying $500 per fresh retrieval." My hands were shaking. Not from cold. They were digging up the animals themselves. I waited until they moved further into Section B, their backs to me, then I ran. Kept low, moved between headstones, made for the main path. My boots crunched too loud on the frozen ground, and I heard one of them shout, "Hey, someone's here!" Flashlight beams swung toward me. I sprinted for the entrance, legs burning, breath coming in gasps. Behind me, footsteps pounding, voices yelling. The gate was still open. My car was right there. I got the door open, threw myself inside, jammed the key in the ignition. The engine turned over, thank God it actually started, and I reversed hard, tires squealing. In my rear view mirror, I saw 2 of them reach the gate, saw one pull out a phone. I drove straight to the police station, filed a report. They sent officers out immediately, but the van was gone. They found 5 graves disturbed, caskets open, remains missing. The investigation is ongoing. The cemetery has installed new security, upgraded the fence, added cameras. I still coordinate burials for the hospital. I still talk to grieving clients, but I never go to Willow Creek Pet Cemetery anymore. And I never told Mrs. Chen that I didn't get her ring. Because I got something worse. I got a good look at one of the men as I drove away, and last week he came into our hospital asking about our cremation procedures, about what we do with remains, about our disposal protocols. He smiled at me like he recognized me too. The gift shop smelled like burnt coffee and something sweet gone bad. I'd been standing behind the counter of Merle's Miracle Mile, a roadside attraction off Highway 50, featuring the world's 3rd largest ball of twine, for exactly 2 weeks when the man in the yellow windbreaker first appeared. I took this job because my apartment in Kansas City had flooded and I needed fast cash. My aunt knew the owner, said it was easy work during off-season. Just watch the register, sell some postcards, make sure nobody vandalizes the twine ball. The place got maybe 5 visitors a day in October. The man came in on a Tuesday around noon. Mid-40s, clean-shaven, pleasant smile. He bought a keychain and asked how long I'd been working there. Normal small talk. I told him 2 weeks. He nodded like I'd confirmed something, then left. He came back Thursday. Same yellow windbreaker. This time he didn't buy anything, just walked the perimeter of the main exhibit hall where the twine ball sat under harsh fluorescent lights. The ball itself was disappointing. About 8 feet in diameter, wrapped in layers of dust and sisal rope that some farmer had been adding to since 1953. The man circled it 3 times, then left without a word. Friday, he was back at opening. I was unlocking the front door when I saw his sedan in the parking lot. He waited in his car until I got inside, then followed me in exactly 5 minutes later. This time he spoke. "You're alone here most days?" It wasn't a question. My stomach tightened. "Owner stops by sometimes," I lied. "Merle died in August. Heart attack. His daughter owns it now. She lives in Topeka." I kept my face neutral. "Can I help you with something?" "Just browsing." He stayed for 40 minutes, always in my peripheral vision. When he finally left, I locked the door behind him and called my aunt. She didn't answer. I tried the owner's number from the contact sheet in the back office. Voicemail. The next customer didn't arrive until 3 p.m., a family with 2 kids who spent 10 minutes taking photos and left. The man in the yellow windbreaker returned at 3:30. "You locked the door earlier," he said, "during business hours." "We were closed for lunch. The sign says you're open until 5. He was right. There was no lunch closure posted. He walked to the twine ball again. This time, he pulled out his phone and started taking pictures. Not of the ball, but of the walls, the exits, the security camera in the corner. I'd assumed that camera was real. Now, looking at its dusty lens and disconnected wire, I wasn't sure. "I'm going to need you to stop that," I said. He lowered his phone. "Stop what?" "Taking pictures of the facility." "I'm taking pictures of a tourist attraction I paid to enter." I hadn't seen him pay. He walked toward me, and I stepped back behind the counter. My phone was in my jacket pocket, hanging in the back office. "You know what's interesting about this place?" he said. "It's 23 miles from the nearest town. No cell signal, no neighbors, just highway and cornfields." My mouth went dry. I'd noticed the phone signal issue my first day. Another reason I'd called this a temporary gig. "There's a landline," I said, glancing at the old rotary phone on the counter. He followed my gaze and smiled. "I know." The way he said it made my skin crawl. I grabbed the receiver. Dead silence. Not even a dial tone. He pulled a chair from the small cafe area and sat down 15 feet from the counter. "We should talk about why I'm here. You need to leave. Do you know who used to work this job before you?" I shook my head. "Her name was Rachel Simmons, 24, took the job last October, off-season just like you. She worked here for 3 weeks. He pulled a folded newspaper clipping from his windbreaker and slid it across the floor toward me. I didn't pick it up. "They found her car abandoned at a rest stop 40 miles south. Never found her." My heart hammered. "Who are you?" "Before Rachel, there was a guy named Tim Chen. Worked here the October before that. 2 weeks in, he quit. Just walked off the job. Wouldn't say why. I found him in Seattle 6 months ago. Took a while to get him to talk." He leaned forward. "Before Tim, there was Amy Pritchard. Before Amy, there was..." "Stop." "Marcus Webb. 4 people in 4 years. All hired for October. All alone here. All gone or traumatized." I looked at the exits. Front door, 30 feet away. Back door, through the office. Closer, but I'd have to turn my back on him. "You're trying to scare me," I said. "I'm trying to warn you. My sister was Rachel. I've spent a year tracking this pattern. The owner's daughter, she knows. She hires people off-season, people without local connections, people who need fast cash and won't ask questions, people who will work alone. He stood up. I grabbed a letter opener from the counter. "What happens here?" I whispered. He shook his head. "Tim wouldn't say, but he checks every door 3 times before sleeping. And he doesn't drive on highways anymore." The sound of gravel crunching outside froze us both. A truck was pulling into the parking lot. The owner's daughter's truck. I recognized it from the day she'd hired me. The man in the yellow windbreaker moved toward the back exit. "Don't work a night shift," he said. "Don't stay past closing. Don't ever be here alone after dark." He disappeared into the office as the front door opened. The owner's daughter walked in, all smiles. "Hey, just wanted to check on you. Everything going okay?" I stared at her. She was holding a new padlock. "I'm installing better security," she said, seeing my expression. "For your safety. This one goes on the inside of the back door, so nobody can surprise you from the rear exit during your evening shifts." Evening shifts? Starting tonight. Didn't I mention? We're extending hours through Halloween. You'll close at midnight now. She smiled wider. "It'll be just you and the twine ball. Won't that be nice and quiet?" My daughter's 12th birthday sleepover ended with 3 missing girls and a police investigation that closed too quickly. I'm writing this because the detective who worked the case died last week, and his daughter found something in his files he never reported. The party was supposed to be simple: 6 girls, pizza, movies, the usual chaos. My daughter Emma had been planning it for months, carefully selecting which friends from her new middle school would come. We'd only moved to Millbrook 3 months earlier for my husband's job, and I was grateful she'd made friends so quickly in such a small town. The girls arrived Friday evening during the first major snowstorm of the season. Sarah came first, then Kayla and Madison together, followed by twins Olivia and Sophia. They took over our finished basement, which had its own bathroom and outside entrance, perfect for keeping the noise contained. I set up sleeping bags, left snacks on the coffee table, and told them to keep it down after 11. Around 10:30, I heard the basement door open and close. Not unusual. Sometimes they'd go out to look at the snow. I was folding laundry upstairs when Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, her face pale. "Mom, where's Sarah?" "What do you mean? Isn't she downstairs?" "She went to the bathroom 20 minutes ago and never came back." I followed Emma down to the basement. The other 4 girls were huddled on the couch, looking at their phones. The bathroom door stood open, empty. The outside door was locked from the inside. "Maybe she went upstairs," I suggested, but we'd already checked. We searched the whole house. Sarah's overnight bag was still in the basement, her phone sitting on top of it. I called Sarah's parents. They lived on the other side of town, about 15 minutes away. Her mother's voice went sharp with panic. She wouldn't just leave, not without her phone. We called the police. Officer Hendricks arrived within 10 minutes. Small town response time. He was in his 50s, calm and methodical. He checked the basement door's lock, examined the windows, all latched from inside, and asked the girls what happened. They'd been watching a movie. Sarah said she needed the bathroom. They assumed she was in there until Emma knocked and got no answer. That was it. No argument, no reason to leave. Hendricks radioed for backup. 2 more officers arrived, along with Detective Carver, who I'd later learn had worked every major case in Millbrook for 20 years. He had kind eyes, but a mouth that never quite smiled. He separated the girls, interviewed each one privately. I sat with Emma while he talked to the others. Through the basement ceiling, I could hear him moving around upstairs, methodical and thorough. Then Kayla started screaming. We all rushed to the living room. Kayla stood at the front window, pointing outside. Detective Carver was already moving, pulling on his coat. I looked where she was pointing. Footprints in the fresh snow, small footprints, leading from our property toward the woods behind the neighborhood. Just one set, already filling with new snow. Carver organized a search immediately. More officers arrived. Parents came to collect their daughters. Sarah's father showed up with a hunting rifle, had to be talked down by 3 officers. The girls were interviewed again, more intensely this time. That's when Madison mentioned the game. She said it quietly, almost as an afterthought. They'd been playing something called the sleepover game that Sarah found online. You were supposed to go to the bathroom at exactly 10:17 p.m., look in the mirror, and say a rhyme 3 times. If you did it right, you'd see your future. What rhyme? Carver asked. Madison recited it. Mirror, mirror in the night, show me what's beyond my sight. Take me where I need to be. Let me see what I can't see. Carver wrote it down without expression. The search continued through the night. They followed the footprints to the woods where they disappeared at the tree line. The snow hadn't penetrated the canopy. Search dogs lost the scent at the same spot. Sarah's phone records showed nothing unusual. The basement door lock showed no signs of tampering. By Sunday afternoon, the official theory was that Sarah ran away. Despite the locked door, despite leaving her phone, despite the snow and single set of footprints that appeared to start at our house rather than approach it. The case stayed open but went cold fast. Too fast. Emma stopped talking about it after a few weeks. We all did. The sleepover became the thing we didn't mention. The other girls' parents were polite but distant. We stayed in Millbrook. My husband's job was too good to leave, but we never quite belonged after that. Then, Detective Carver died last Tuesday. Heart attack at 63. His daughter called me on Friday. She'd been going through his home office, sorting papers for the estate. I found a file, she said, about the girl who disappeared from your house. There's something in it he never put in the official report. She sent me photos, printouts of forum posts, all from different usernames, all describing the same game. Girls who played it at sleepovers, girls who disappeared. 23 cases over 40 years, all across the country, all small towns, all during snowstorms. The last page was handwritten notes in Carver's precise script. Pattern confirmed. No jurisdiction for investigation. No evidence of crime. Cannot pursue without proof of conspiracy. Victims' families deserve to know, but what would I tell them? Underneath, he'd written one more line. The footprints walked to the woods. But in the photos from the tree line, you can see them in reverse. They walked from the woods to the house. I pulled out my own photos from that night, the ones the police took. Zoomed in on the ones showing the footprints at the tree line. He was right. The toe impressions faced the wrong direction. Whatever Sarah became that night, it walked back to my house wearing her boots. It stood at my basement door. And when we opened it, it was already gone. The wind doesn't howl up here, it screams. 48 hours ago, I thought a week at this remote ski lodge would be the perfect escape from my divorce paperwork and empty apartment. I'm a paralegal in Denver. Was. I put in my 2 weeks' notice before driving up here, thinking I'd use the isolation to figure out what comes next. The lodge sits at 9,000 feet, accessible only by a single winding road that becomes impassable when the weather turns, which it did. 12 hours into my stay, The snow started Tuesday evening. By Wednesday morning, 3 feet had accumulated and the power went out around noon. The backup generator kicked in, but the manager, a woman named Carol, who looked like she'd been carved from the same granite as the mountains, told the 6 of us stranded here that we should conserve electricity, use the common areas, stay together. There's me, Carol, an elderly couple from Texas, a guy in his 30s who said he was here for business, and a young woman who checked in the same day as me. Her name is Sophie. Was Sophie. We found her this morning. She'd been staying in the room next to mine, and I'd heard her moving around last night. The walls are thick log, but sound carries through the heating vents. I heard her door open around 2 a.m. Footsteps in the hallway. Then nothing. When she didn't show up for the communal breakfast Carol had organized, canned soup heated on the wood stove, I mentioned it. Carol knocked on Sophie's door. No answer. She used her master key. The room was empty. Bed made. Suitcase gone. The window was open. Snow drifted across the floor. Carol closed the door quickly, but not before I saw the blood on the windowsill. Just a smear, dark against the white-painted wood. She must have left, Carol said. Her voice was too steady. Some people can't handle being stuck. In a blizzard? The Texas woman, Martha, looked horrified. We need to call someone. Lines are down, the business guy said. His name is Derek, and he's been way too calm about everything. Cell towers, too, I checked. Carol nodded. The storm should break tomorrow. We'll report it then. But I saw her face when she closed that door. She wasn't surprised. I went back to my room and locked the door, and then I pushed the dresser in front of it. The heating vent connects our rooms, and I knelt down, pressing my ear to it. I could hear movement next door. Slow, deliberate. Someone was in Sophie's room. I grabbed my phone. Useless for calls, but the flashlight still worked. And my car keys. Not that my Civic was going anywhere in this snow, but the panic button on the fob made me feel slightly less helpless. The lodge has 12 rooms split between 2 floors, plus Carol's office and apartment on the ground level. Common room, kitchen, storage. 2 exits, front and back. Both probably buried under 4 feet of snow by now. I made my way downstairs, avoiding the creaky spots I'd mapped out over the past 2 days. Paranoid habit from growing up with a father who drank. Always know which floorboards talk. Carol's office door was ajar. I could hear voices. And can't keep doing this. That was Carol, but her voice had changed, harder. You said it would be clean. It was clean, Derek. She went out the window, fell, happens in storms like this. There's blood. Panic. She cut herself on the glass. It makes sense. A long pause. The others? The couple won't be a problem. Too old, too scared. But the paralegal might be. My paralegal. I backed away from the door, heart slamming against my ribs. The floor creaked. The voices stopped. I ran. Back up the stairs, into my room. The dresser was still in place, but now it felt like a barricade instead of a precaution. I pulled out my laptop. It's a battery at 40%, no internet, but I could write this down. Document it. If something happens to me, maybe someone will find this. Footsteps in the hallway, a knock on my door. Hey, Derek's voice casual. Carol's making dinner. You coming down? I stayed silent, barely breathing. Look, I know you're freaked out about Sophie. We all are. But we need to stick together, okay? It's not safe to be alone. The irony wasn't lost on me. He waited another minute, then walked away. I heard him knock on other doors, the same friendly invitation, playing the concerned fellow guest. I found Sophie's Instagram on my phone. We'd exchanged handles over drinks the first night. Her last post was from 2 days ago, a photo of the lodge. Caption reading solo retreat. Perfect place to disappear for a while. The comments were full of heart emojis and jealous messages. No one knew she was in danger. No one would miss her for days, maybe weeks. That's when I understood. This wasn't random. The storm was predicted. The lodge is remote. Carol and Derek, maybe others, they planned this. Sophie's disappearance, maybe others before her. I checked her profile more carefully. She'd posted about a recent inheritance. About wanting to get away and figure out what to do with her new freedom. Money. It always comes down to money. Another knock. This time, Carol. Sweetie, you need to eat something. Come on down. When I didn't answer, her tone shifted. Don't make this difficult. The doorknob turned, locked. She tried her key. The dresser held. Derek, she called. I grabbed my coat, my phone, anything I could fit in my pockets. The window. It was my only option. The frame resisted, swollen from moisture, but I forced it open. Snow and wind blasted in. The roof of the back porch was maybe 8 feet below, covered in snow. If I could make it there, slide down, get to the tree line. The dresser scraped across the floor behind me. I climbed out. The cold hit like a physical blow. Wind tearing at my clothes. Snow blinding me. I landed hard on the porch roof, my ankle twisting. Pain shot up my leg, but I kept moving, half sliding, half falling to the ground. The tree line was 50 yards away, might as well have been 50 miles. Behind me, I heard shouting, a light from my window. I ran. The snow was waist deep in places. My ankles screamed. But I kept going into the darkness, into the trees, into the storm. I'm writing this from a hollow beneath a fallen spruce, my phone at 12% battery. It's been 3 hours. I can't feel my feet. The storm hasn't broken, but I can see lights moving through the trees, flashlights, searching. They're not giving up. Neither am I. The host kept texting me about the thermostat. 3 times before I even got to the property, then twice more while I was unloading my car. Just want to make sure you're comfortable, each message said with slight variations. The Airbnb sat at the end of a gravel road in what the listing called a charming mountain community. Population maybe 200 if you counted the seasonal residents. I'm a freelance copywriter, and I'd booked the place for a week to finish a project away from my studio apartment's distractions. The photos showed a renovated cabin with floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, and that rustic chic aesthetic that photographs well. What the photos didn't show was how isolated it actually was, or that the nearest neighbor's house was dark and looked abandoned. The lockbox code worked fine. Inside, well, everything matched the listing. Spotless hardwood floors, a kitchen island with those trendy pendant lights, a bedroom loft accessible by floating stairs. But within 10 minutes, I noticed the thermostat was in a locked plastic case. Not unusual for a rental, except the host had specifically asked about my comfort 3 times. I texted back, all good, temp is fine. His response came in seconds. Perfect, I can adjust it remotely if needed. Sleep well. That night, I worked at the kitchen island until around 11. The windows turned into black mirrors after dark, reflecting the interior back at me. I'd pull the curtains, but there weren't any. Every wall facing outside was glass, and the only coverings were in the bedroom loft. Thin roller shades that didn't quite reach the sills. Around midnight, the thermostat clicked. The temperature display jumped from 72 to 65. I watched it drop in real time, 64, 63, 62. Within 20 minutes, I could see my breath. I texted the host. Thermostat is dropping. Can you fix it? No response. I tried the locked case. Solid. I grabbed a blanket from the loft and kept working, but the cold made my fingers stiff. At 60 degrees, I gave up and climbed into bed fully clothed, piling on every blanket I could find. The thermostat clicked again at 2 a.m. The heat came back on, and within an hour, the cabin was uncomfortably warm. I kicked off blankets, then my sweatshirt. By 3 a.m., it was 78 degrees and climbing. I opened a window in the loft, the only one that wasn't fixed, and the cool mountain air felt, like salvation. That's when I saw the light. A single point of red, maybe 100 yards into the trees, too steady to be a campfire, too bright to be a cigarette. It didn't move, just held position at roughly the same height as my loft window. I closed the window, drew the shade. The thermostat clicked off, and the temperature began dropping again. In the morning, I convinced myself I'd imagined the light's significance. I texted the host about the thermostat malfunction. He responded immediately. So sorry, sometimes the system overcorrects. I've adjusted the settings, won't happen again. But it did happen again. That night, same pattern. Freezing cold until I was forced to open the window. Then the light appeared in the trees. When I closed the window, the cycle reversed. I lasted until 4 a.m. before I opened it again, too hot to think straight. The light was there, waiting. I tried to sleep in the main room, but the glass walls made me feel like an exhibit. Every shadow outside could be someone standing just beyond the light's reach. The host's texts continued. Everything okay? Thermostat working better? Need anything? On the third night, I stayed awake. When the cold forced me to open the window around 2 a.m., I grabbed my phone and zoomed in on the light. Through the camera, I could see it wasn't a light at all. It was a reflection. Glass catching the cabin's interior lights. A lens. I closed the window immediately and pulled the shade. Then I went downstairs and turned off every light in the cabin. In the darkness, I opened my laptop and checked the property listing again. The host had been a member for 3 years, 12 properties, all 5-star reviews. But when I clicked through to his profile, something caught my attention. The date he'd joined matched the date of his first property listing. No gradual build-up, no guest reviews before becoming a host. The account existed solely to rent properties. I searched the property address with camera and privacy as keywords. Nothing. Then I tried the host's name with arrest and found a 6-year-old article from 2 counties over. Charges filed, then dropped, in a voyeurism case. Different first name, same last name, similar age. Could be a relative, could be him. The thermostat clicked. Heat flooded back. I grabbed my keys and laptop and threw everything into my car. The host texted as I backed down the gravel road. Leaving early? Hope everything was okay? I didn't respond. Didn't leave a review. I drove until I hit a town large enough to have a chain hotel with interior corridors and curtains that actually closed. 2 weeks later, the host's account was gone. All 12 properties, all the reviews, just deleted. I reported what I'd found to Airbnb's trust and safety team, sent them the article, described the thermostat pattern and the lens in the trees. They sent a template response, thanking me for my feedback. Last month, I was scrolling through listings for a work trip and saw one of the same properties under a new host name. Same photos, same floor-to-ceiling windows, same location, different account, same setup. The reviews were already accumulating. Beautiful view. So private and peaceful. Host was very attentive. I wanted to comment on every review, warn them. But what would I say? That the host controls the temperature? That there might be a camera in the woods? I have no proof, just a pattern and a deleted account, and a feeling I can't shake. The listing is still active. I check it sometimes. The calendar shows it's booked almost every weekend. Mostly solo travelers looking for a quiet retreat. I hope they sleep with their windows closed. The charity shop smelled like old books and mothballs, familiar and safe until it wasn't. I'd been volunteering there for 6 months, Tuesday evenings mostly, sorting donations in the back room while Linda handled the till. She called in sick that night, stomach bug, she said, and asked if I could cover alone. The shop closed at 8. I'd lock up, drop the keys through the manager's letterbox 2 doors down, simple enough. Around 7:30, a man came in, mid-40s, clean-shaven, wearing a high-vis jacket with a contractor's logo I didn't recognize. He browsed the bookshelves near the window, methodical, running his finger along the spines. I kept sorting a box of donated kitchenware in the back room, door propped open so I could see the shop floor. He approached the counter. "You're new." "Just covering tonight," I said, coming through. "Can I help you find something?" "No." He smiled. "Just haven't seen you before." He left, without buying anything. The bell above the door chimed as it closed behind him. 10 minutes later, I locked the front door and flipped the sign to closed. I still had to finish logging the donations, manager's policy, everything recorded before we left. I went back to the stockroom, a cramped space with metal shelving units and a single bare bulb overhead. That's when I heard the back door handle rattle. The charity shop shared a rear alley with 3 other businesses, all closed by now. The back door was supposed to be locked. I'd checked it when I arrived. I stood completely still listening. The rattling stopped. Then I heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving along the alley toward the fire escape that led to the flats above. I told myself it was nothing. Someone taking a shortcut, kids messing about. I returned to the donation log, but my hands were shaking. I logged 2 teapots, a set of wine glasses, the back door opened. I hadn't heard it unlock. But there it was, swinging inward, and the high-vis man stepped through. He had a key. "Shop's closed," I managed to say. "I know." He closed the door behind him. "I'm the maintenance contractor. Building owner sent me to check the electrics." I had no way to verify that. No phone signal in the back room, thick stone walls, something about the building's age. My mobile was in my bag under the counter out front. "I wasn't told anyone was coming," I said. Emergency call out." He moved deeper into the stockroom, inspecting the ceiling. Faulty wiring could be dangerous. He knew the layout, knew where the fuse box was, mounted on the wall beside the shelving. He opened it, peered inside, then looked at me. "You shouldn't be here alone," he said. "Not safe. I'm just finishing up. Take your time." He smiled again. "I'll be here a while." Every instinct told me to leave, but my bag was out front, and to get there I'd have to walk past him. The stockroom had no other exit. The rear door he'd come through led only to the alley, a dead end blocked by wheelie bins and a locked gate I didn't have the key for. I picked up the donation log, pretending to work. He stood by the fuse box, watching me. Not doing anything, just watching. "You live local?" he asked. "Not really." "How do you get home?" "Bus. Last one's at 8:15. You'll miss it." I didn't know how he knew the bus schedule. I looked at my watch. 8:05. "I should go," I said, moving toward the door to the shop floor. He didn't block me, but he followed, close enough that I could hear his breathing. I grabbed my bag from under the counter, fumbling for my phone. 2 missed calls from Linda. No signal still, the whole street was a dead zone. Something about the old buildings interfering with the towers. "Let me walk you out," he said. "It's dark." "I'm fine," I insist. He was between me and the front door. The key to the deadbolt was in my hand, but I couldn't unlock it without turning my back on him. "The manager will be here soon," I lied, "to pick up the keys." "No, she won't." His smile faded. "She called me. Told me you'd be alone tonight." Linda had never mentioned a contractor. Had never mentioned him at all. I unlocked the deadbolt, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the key. He stepped closer. I yanked the door open and stumbled onto the pavement into the glow of the streetlights. A couple walked past, chatting, oblivious. I ran. I didn't stop until I reached the high street, crowded with people leaving the cinema. I called the police from outside a Tesco Express. They took a statement, sent a unit to the shop. The back door was locked when they arrived. No sign of forced entry, no contractor logged with the building owner, no one on the CCTV. The camera covering the rear alley had been repositioned 3 days earlier during routine maintenance and hadn't been aimed correctly since. Linda never called anyone. When I finally got through to her, she was confused, insistent she'd only texted me about being ill. Her phone showed no outgoing calls that evening. I never went back. The manager was sympathetic but baffled. Nothing was missing, nothing damaged. Just a volunteer who'd spooked herself, she probably thought. 2 weeks later, I saw him again, standing outside the coffee shop near my flat, wearing the same high-vis jacket. He didn't approach, didn't wave. Just watched me through the window until I left by the rear exit. I moved a month after that. Changed my route to work. Deleted my social media. But sometimes, when I'm alone in a shop or waiting for a bus, I'll see someone in a high-vis jacket, and my hands start to shake. The police never found him. No name, no company, no record of any contractor matching his description. Just a man with a key he shouldn't have had, and the knowledge of exactly when I'd be alone. I still don't know how he got Linda's number to spoof the call, or how he knew I'd be covering that shift. But I think he's still looking for me. The police liaison officer handed me a form across the scratched plastic desk. Witness statement, incident reference, WM in 24 087453. I'd come to collect my phone. They'd kept it as evidence for 3 weeks. But apparently there was some paperwork first. I'm writing this down properly, now because the detective called yesterday. They want me to come back in. They found something on the CCTV footage that requires clarification. It started at the multi-story car park on Broad Street, the one attached to the shopping center. I'd parked on level 4 around 7:30 in the evening. Late night shopping before the Christmas rush properly kicked off. The plan was simple. Grab a few gifts, back to the car by 9, home before 10. I had a work presentation the next morning and needed the sleep. The car park was nearly empty when I returned. Most shops were closing. My footsteps echoed off the concrete as I walked toward my Fiesta, keys already in hand. The overhead lights were those sodium things that make everything look jaundiced and flat. Half of them were out. Budget cuts, probably. That's when I saw the man. He was standing between 2 cars, 3 spaces down from mine. Just standing there, hands in his coat pockets, staring at me. Not looking, staring. The kind of eye contact that feels like a physical thing pressing against your chest. I slowed. Tried to look casual. Pulled out my phone like I'd just remembered a text. The screen showed one bar of signal, flickering. The car park had always been bad for reception, something about the concrete. He started walking toward me. I turned back toward the stairwell, kept my pace normal. Don't run. Running makes you pray. I'd read that somewhere, probably some true crime subreddit I shouldn't have been reading at 2 a.m. Behind me, his footsteps matched my rhythm. Not faster, not slower, mirroring. The stairwell door was heavy, reinforced. I pulled it open, and it swung shut behind me with a metallic clang that reverberated down the concrete shaft. Started down the stairs, taking them 2 at a time now. The emergency lighting barely worked. Just dim green signs at every other landing. I heard the door above me open. Level 3, level 2. My breath was loud in my ears, ragged. I should have gone to the shopping center entrance, not down, stupid. But I'd panicked, and down felt like escape. Level 1. Ground floor. I burst through the door into the ground level car park. This level was busier. A few cars, someone loading shopping into a boot about 30 meters away. Relief flooded through me. Witnesses. Safety. Then I saw the second man. He was leaning against a concrete pillar, directly between me and the exit to the street. Leather jacket. Same build as the one upstairs. He straightened when he saw me, pulled out his phone, typed something. His eyes never left mine. The stairwell door crashed open behind me. I was boxed in. 2 of them. Coordinated. I looked toward the person loading shopping, a woman, older, already getting into her car. She didn't look over. Why would she? I was just someone standing there. The man from upstairs walked slowly toward me, pulling something from his jacket. My brain screamed wallet, knife, gun, but it was a phone. He held it up, screen facing me. A photograph. Even in the bad light, I could see it clearly. A young man, maybe early 20s, dark hair. I'd never seen him before in my life. Where is he? The man's voice was quiet, controlled. That was worse than shouting. I don't know who that is. You were there, the club, Tuesday night. You were with him. I wasn't. I don't go to clubs. I work early shifts. My voice was too high, panicked. You've got the wrong person. The second man had moved closer. They had me in a triangle now. Pillar behind me, 1 on each side. Your car's on level 4. The first man tilted his head. Blue Fiesta, registration LK67GXE. We watched you park. My stomach dropped. They'd been following me, waiting. Check my ID, I said. Check my phone. I'll show you. Your mate thinks he can vanish? Thinks he can take what's ours and just disappear? The man stepped closer. But everyone knows someone. Everyone's got friends, family, colleagues. I don't know him, I was shouting now. The woman's car reversed out of its space, headlights sweeping across us. She drove past without slowing, didn't even glance over. The second man spoke for the first time. The club has cameras. We've seen you both. Then look at them again, I said. Oh, please, just look properly. I'm not whoever you think I am. The first man studied me. The silence stretched. From somewhere above, tires squealed. Someone taking the turns too fast. Show me your phone. I unlocked it with shaking hands. He took it, scrolled through my photos, my messages, my call log. His expression didn't change. He handed it to the second man, who did the same thing. The second man showed him something on his own phone. They spoke too quietly for me to hear. My legs felt liquid. I focused on breathing. The concrete pillar was cold against my back. Finally, the first man handed my phone back. You've got a brother? What? A brother. Cousin, someone who looks like you. I thought of Danny, my younger brother, same height, same build, same dark blonde hair. He'd borrowed my old coat last month, my green Berghaus that I'd been wearing when I parked. Maybe, I whispered, maybe. The man nodded slowly. Give him a message. Tell him Marcus is looking for him. Tell him we know where his family parks. They walked away. Just like that. Out through the exit to the street. Gone into the evening crowd. I waited 20 minutes before I moved. Called Danny 17 times. He finally answered at midnight. Told me he'd explain later. He sounded scared. The police were professional, bored even. Mistaken identity happens all the time. They'd check the CCTV, file a report. I gave them everything, the conversation, the descriptions, the name Marcus. They took my phone for evidence, said they'd be in touch. That was 3 weeks ago. Yesterday's call was different. The detective's voice was careful. The CCTV footage from that evening? We need to clarify something. You said there were 2 men. But the cameras show you standing alone in that car park for 11 minutes, talking to yourself. Can you come in and explain that?